I now call to order the third general session of the 56th General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association. We're going to have an amazing day today with some interesting things, just like yesterday was amazing, so hold on to your seats. Before we begin the work today, it's my pleasure to introduce another one of our amazing youth observers, Bailey Saddlemeyer, who will offer our centering words this morning.
A reading from Dana E. Warsnop. Often people say that they love coming to a place with so many like-minded people. I know just what they're getting at, and I know that they aren't quite getting it right. I don't just want to be with a bunch of people who think just like me. I want to be in a beloved community where I don't have to think like everyone else to be loved, to be eligible for salvation. I want to be with people who value compassion, justice, love, and truth, though they have different thoughts and opinions about all sorts of things. I want to be with independent-minded people of good heart. I want to be with people who have many names and no name at all for God. I want to be with people who see in me goodness and dignity, who also see my failings and foibles, and who still love me. I want to be with people who feel their interconnection with all existence and let it guide their footfalls upon the earth. I want to be with people who see life as a paradox and don't always rush to resolve it. I want to be with people who are willing to walk the tightrope that is life and who will hold my hand as I walk mine. I want to be with people who let church call them into a different way of being in the world. I want to be with people who support, encourage, and even challenge each other to higher and more ethical living. In short, I want to be with people like you.
Thank you, Bailey, and we want to be with you. Does our Right Relationship team have a report for us this morning? Oh, they're saying yes, they do. Come on down.
Good morning. Welcome back, and many blessings as we enter this third day of our General Assembly. I hope that you were all able to enjoy last night's service of the Living Tradition, and congratulations to many. In our time together thus far, we have had opportunities aplenty to engage in our own discomforts and understandings. And we have seen the challenges that come with encountering identity, culture, oppression, while being together, as well as the practice of coming back into our beloved community and back into right relationship with one another. To be specific, and as many of you may know, yesterday the Undoing Racism workshops did not have facilitators present. And unfortunately, the remainder of this track has been canceled. We encourage you to look to similar workshops and resources, and we do acknowledge the pain and frustration many folks feel as they hope to engage in this specific work. It is important that we hold ourselves accountable to our commitments, even when things are not going as planned. And while looking through other workshops, you may find that some spaces are designated exclusively for folks of specific identities. The RRT recognizes that this is a new phenomenon to some, and we urge you to respect this boundary. And we do know that within the past few program slots, some folks have been turned away from spaces in efforts to maintain this sacred space. It can be hurtful sometimes when folks are turned away from workshops due to assumptions based off of their appearance as well. And so as we continue throughout this GA, we will once again invite us to resist the temptations to lean back on comforting patterns of behaving and ways of being. Rejoice at the profound possibility to do better. Thank you.
Thank you for your continued good work. A couple of quick announcements before I bring back your favorite trio. The weather has taken a toll on some of your badges, your name badges. Mother Nature, don't mess with her. If you go to the registration tables at the back, check and see if you can get a new name tag printed for yourself. I also want to let you know, and we're going to try to get this on the GA app, that we are accepting, the Board of Trustees is accepting nominations for the acting moderator role that will be filled by the middle of June. We're accepting those nominations through the end of June. June 30th is the cutoff. So if you are interested in learning more about that role and perhaps submitting your name, you can write to board@uua.org. You can certainly go to the office hours in room 203 in order to learn a little bit more about the position today from 4 to 5 and tomorrow from 4 to 5. So I encourage you to do that if you have any interest. And now, back by popular demand, I bring you our co-presidents who have been working extraordinarily hard and have achieved so much in their short tenure. We are so grateful for the path that they are crafting for our next president and for our association. I give you Reverend Sophia Betancourt, Reverend Bill Singford, and Leon Spencer.
In a normal year, the President's and Staff Report is an opportunity to celebrate achievements, to hold up examples of how we are living our faith in the world, and invite thanks for the dedicated work of the UUA staff. We do want to begin this year by giving a shout out to the staff. They are there every day to support your congregations and our ministry as we proclaim our message of hope and love. From the senior managers and program professionals to the administrators, the experts in finance and information technology, from the leaders in stewardship and development who invite our generosity, to the staff that lovingly maintain our facilities, we owe them all a debt of gratitude. Would the UUA staff please rise and receive the thanks of the Assembly. Even in this difficult year, the staff has been moving ahead, strengthening important partnerships like that with the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. You will be hearing more tomorrow about the College of Social Justice and the important new Love Resists campaign. The staff has also been moving forward to support the diversity in our ministries, deepening and broadening the educational and worship resources that we make available, strengthening our communications networks. Much has, in fact, been accomplished. And the staff has welcomed all 3 interim co-presidents, and I want to thank them personally for welcoming me back. In fact, the password on the computer I was given in Boston is, "Welcome back, Bill." You can read details in the staff report, and I know that you are all competent readers. But let's give them one more hand. We, your 3 interim co-presidents, are completing our brief weeks of service, the shortest interim in the history of the Unitarian Universalist Association. And in point of fact, there has been scant time for normal interim work, and there is no playbook for a presidential transition like this one in any event. But we have observed and listened with intention, and we thought it would be helpful first to report back to you what we have observed and what we have learned. Next, we were given a specific charge by the Board of Trustees. We want to share with you how we heard that charge, how we interpret it, and how we have tried to address it. And finally, we want to share some conclusions that have become clear to us and name some questions we need to pass on as we search for that path that is calling us toward hope.
So first, what have we learned? We found a religious community in a state of shock. The charges of racism in hiring shocked our community. Many white UUs asked, how could this be? But most UU people of color were not surprised. Only surprised that it had been called out, and that difference in reaction was itself a shock and a challenge to our community that we want to call beloved. The resignation of a UUA president was unprecedented. The resignations that followed made many ask what was really going on. Just how far had our practice veered from our principles? We have not attempted to find one truth about these events. We've heard many versions of the truth in our short tenure, but we are certain about the shock. Our presence has felt less like interim ministry, in fact, and more like after-pastor work, post-traumatic, but we are truly not yet after the trauma. The trauma is not yet past. We are still in its midst. We found a staff that was dispirited and anxious at times about the future. Now, anxiety itself is not unusual in a presidential election year, but it was deeper this year.
The staff of color felt particularly vulnerable, hopeful. Thank you. Hopeful because unspoken truths were being spoken, but vulnerable. We found our national volunteer leaders stunned and struggling to keep up with the changes, decisions, some changes they had initiated, like the financial commitment to support Black lives of Unitarian Universalists, but some out of their control. They are now dealing with the unexpected grief and loss at the sudden death of moderator Jim Key. We found that boundaries between staff and board and the clarity necessary for good governance had blurred beyond good practice and needed to be reestablished. We found a community of congregations willing and open for serious conversation about race and culture. Open it once again. Some opened the conversation for the first time. For many, we found a national institution that was in shock and grief, that was angry, that was anxious, an institution that was vulnerable and fearful. Vulnerable, fearful, an institution serving a community that itself was shocked, but community, that was willing to be hopeful one more time.
As we were moving into our interim roles, our congregations were being asked to engage their own culture of white supremacy. That invitation was extended by Aisha Hauser, Christina Rivera, and Kenny Wiley, 3 religious educators. Amen. And it's important to note that that invitation came up from within our community rather than from the top down. And over 700 of our congregations took part in some form or fashion. And I'm curious, how many of the congregations represented here took part in that white supremacy teach-in? Just look around. Just as we received national visibility, we did not want, as a result of the charges of racism in our hiring and the resignations that followed, we discovered that much of the religious world was watching this attempt to see our culture and structures of power with enough clarity to imagine changing them. Many were watching the association's financial commitment to blue and hoping, however tentatively, that Unitarian Universalism might be charting a path they would soon need to follow. We found a faith community living in grief and in anxiety, while at the very same time living in hope.
When we accepted this interim leadership, we were given a specific and extensive charge by the Board of Trustees, calling for the creation of a commission on institutional change with specific deliverables. And the board also passed a motion calling for an independent racism audit for new hiring procedures with new goals set, with an invitation to our congregations and related organizations to join with us in this spiritual work. Our charge runs to 2 pages. The racism audit motion to another 2 in 12-point type, single-spaced. On our first day, we invited Sarah Lammert, herself serving in the interim role of Chief Operating Officer, and moderator Jim Key to join us in a leadership team we called the Quintet. After Jim resigned, Vice Moderator Denise Rimes joined us. We knew that shared leadership was necessary, even as we each pursued our individual pieces of the work. The collaboration deepened of our work and provided us with collegial support. It also allowed us to name and begin to restore the boundaries which had become so blurred.
The first item of our charge was to ensure and direct pastoral and professional support to the UUA staff members of color, as well as professionals of color serving in the larger association. We have talked, would listen to religious professionals and laypersons of color in face-to-face encounters, conference calls, visits to congregations, Zoom meetings. The staff of color were already being convened regularly by Tequina Boston, and we have been welcomed into these gatherings. We have listened, and in listening, we've heard almost universally, felt levels of hurt, anger, sadness, disappointment, and loss of control, or trust. There are familiar feelings for many people of color. Having heard leaders who are trusted hear their feelings about an appreciation, we have done much listening, but not enough listening. Changes in our practices are indeed necessarily and needed. It is the possibility that this faith might finally begin to create a culture without white supremacy as its base. That is where we heard the hope. That is where we heard the hope and good news, really, from Unitarian Universalist leaders of color. Truth-telling. Truth-telling is not a single event, not a one-time thing. Truth is a process. And in many ways, the central quality of the beloved community is that it be a place where the hearing of all stories and the valuing of all truths is standard and expected and necessary. It is crucial that we make a commitment to such an ongoing process of truth-telling as we move towards reshaping our faith community. The Commission on Institutional Change is charged with the creation of a truth and reconciliation process, not event, around the recent events that led to our appointment. That is most certainly needed, but we hope the Commission will help us to build a truth and reconciliation into the DNA of this faith.
Amen. Interim supervision of the UUA's Leadership Council was called for in our charge and has been provided. Our presence has been welcomed by these leaders, we are told, and the resignations have not continued. Only time and leadership decisions of a new president, however, will determine whether that stability continues. We were also charged to restore both confidence and vision among our congregations and among donors. This was perhaps the most unrealistic element of a charge for an 11-week interim. Our approach has been to offer regular weekly updates to the UU community at large, reporting on our work in specific areas. We have frankly, and we're very pleased that you have received them so enthusiastically. We have frankly relied on our personal credibility to inspire confidence. A rigorous analysis I'm not sure you're ready for this next one. A rigorous analysis of the operation of white supremacy culture might well call this spiritual domestic work, a phrase coined by Rosemary Bray McNatt, spiritual domestic work for us as person of color leaders. We have tried to make tolerable this use of our persons and our reputations by our refusal to be anything other than honest about what we have found. We have met several times with the UUA's President's Council, written to many of our donors, and met with individuals to answer questions and provide some assurance. Working with Mary Catherine Mourn and leaders in our Stewardship and Development Staff Group, we have begun plans to support the board's financial commitment to Blue and expand the association's support for our racial justice work overall. All of our congregations will be invited this November to conduct worship centered on racial justice, to join in an effort called the Promise and the Practice of Our Faith, and to take a special collection in support of the transformation of our culture. We hope that you will urge your congregations to join in that effort. Please.
The second element of our charge sounds the fundamental challenge of this time: to call upon Unitarian Universalism to redeem its history by planning for and taking steps toward living into an anti-racist, multicultural future. We might say to progress toward an anti-racist, multicultural future. This portion of the work speaks specifically to the need for review and revision of recruitment and hiring practices of religious professionals of color, in addition to the creation of an assessment process and strategy for dismantling the culture of white supremacy within Unitarian Universalism. Clearly, the portion of this charge is that of sowing seeds for a much longer piece of work that will anchor us firmly in our primary values as we move ever closer to building the beloved community. To that end, the board charged us to create and submit for board approval a process by which to analyze structural racism within the UUA. That process will include an external audit of the operation of white privilege and the structure of power within UUism, as well as power structures and power mapping within Unitarian Universalism. The board assisted us directly with this task by passing a racism audit motion that outlines specific needs for assessment within the national staff of the UUA and board-appointed committees, as well as a desire for collaborative efforts across our wider UUA. All of this leads to the establishment of the Commission on Institutional Change, a small and nimble group of UUs who will take up the long work of long-term cultural change, backed by the commitments of both your UUA Board of Trustees and national staff. We approached the construction of the commission by first gathering together a group of respected leaders of color in our movement for a 2-day meeting in Atlanta. We worked together to interpret the charge of the commission, to draw on our history, to gain tools for this current moment of opportunity, and to identify key priorities for the work. We also held meetings with a wide variety of stakeholders and constituency groups, really listening to your hopes for this moment of profound possibility. From that input and wisdom, we appointed a 6-member commission that will work collaboratively with an outside organization to bring badly needed analysis, visioning, and theological depth to the work of institutional change. That commission may work for 18 months or more. In our conversations about this important aspect of our charge, we learned that there is an immediate need for a truth and reconciliation process centered on the events that precipitated our latest conversation around the impact of white supremacy on our faith. There is also a clear desire for the Commission's work to be broad and far-reaching. This work is relational and theological and must unflinchingly question cultural habits and norms that hamper us in our yearning to build the beloved community. In collaboration with our acting COO, the Reverend Sarah Lammert, and based on our recommendations, your Board of Trustees has unanimously appointed this group of phenomenal leaders. These are their names in the order from left to right. It is worth applauding their service. So your newly appointed Commission on Institutional Change is the Reverend Natalie Fenimore, Caitlin Breedlove, Mary Byron, the Reverend Leslie Takahashi, who will serve as our chair, Dr. Elias Ortega Aponte, and Dero Farrar. We are grateful, so grateful for these leaders. I myself will serve as a transitional support member for just a few months to support the Commission's work as it gets underway. This is work that requires every one of us, and I hope that if you, your congregation, your affiliate organization, or other UU connection are invited to join in this dialogue and to engage with the work of the Commission, that you will answer with your most faithful and generous yes. Can you do that? Yes, thank you. Together, we will live into the love and justice that already exists at the heart of this movement. It matters that we pause, really pause, and thank those whose decades of dedicated work to dismantle systemic racism and oppression in our movement brought us to this moment of renewed possibility. Can we thank those leaders? For your tirelessness, your stick-to-itness, and your faithfulness, we give thanks. We also want to thank and acknowledge the work of Jesse King, who worked with us as a consultant over this interim period, for his strength of insight and vision, as well as the generous contribution of his time. He doesn't like to be acknowledged like this.
Give
We
him a
wouldn't
hand.
have gotten this far without his efforts. Thank you, Jesse.
The board also charged us specifically to determine the necessary measures to make concrete progress toward expanding the number of professional people of color, including but not limited to ministers and other religious professionals employed within Unitarian Universalism. This includes particular and measurable emphasis on senior staff positions, including the executive and first management level of the UUA. Our first act as co-presidents, on the very first day, I believe, was to put in place a modified hiring freeze. Beacon Press was accepted, as they have been very intentional in their hiring and already exceeded any standards we anticipated setting. And you can applaud Beacon for that. Frankly, Beacon Press became one of our resources for both ideas and inspiration. And we added Jessica York and Carrie McDonald, both persons of color, to the Staff Leadership Council. We moved forward with new interim hiring procedures that set ambitious goals for leadership by persons of color on the UUA staff. From less than 20% persons of color and individuals and indigenous persons overall, which is where we are right now, 30% is the new goal, a 50% increase. And from less than 15% at the executive and first management level, we established a goal of 40%. The priority here is centering the voice and presence of persons of color and indigenous persons at the decision-making level. Our corporate council is here, and I should tell you that these goals, with their focus on persons of color and indigenous persons, have pushed the limits of what procedures are legally permissible. It should be noted that with the 3 co-presidents and the addition of Jessica and Carrie to the Leadership Council, we virtually achieved that 40% goal on day 1 of our service. Virtually achieved that goal at the executive and first management level, but not at the critical second management and professional level where the hiring controversy originated, and not permanently. When the co-presidents step down, the Leadership Council table will again have fewer than 25% persons of color seated around it. However, new procedures and ambitious, in our judgment, appropriate goals are in place, at least for the interim. Many of the specific elements called for in the racism audit motion will be taken up by the Commission for Institutional Change. There is one truth, however, that we want to make clear. This work will fail if it is not embraced by our congregations and related organizations. The UUA, its president, board, and staff have no control over either. But the UUA can and must issue an urgent invitation for all of us to join in this reflection and this reshaping of our culture. And finally, there are some conclusions we have reached and some questions we would pass on as we complete our short service.
First, and most important, it is crystal clear to the three of us that the inspection of our culture and how it impacts persons of color, how it impacts all of us, is urgent. It is overdue. The risks of failing to engage these issues are enormous for this faith. Change must come if our faith is to thrive.
Second, our history reveals a pattern that could not be clearer. We have repeatedly engaged in issues of race, begun investing resources both financially and spiritually, only to turn away from our engagement. Without those resources and without the attention, without addressing the fundamental cultural issues, we have stopped short of real change every time. This time, our prayer truly needs to be one of persistence.
Third, because we have started so often and actually had some success, we know some things about how to engage. There are resources in our own history on which we can draw, persons we can call on, models we can use, wisdom that can make this attempt easier and more productive. Not easy, but easier.
Fourth, there is trust that must be restored. Trust must be restored, and it is built over time. Trust is built out of experience, not based on promises alone. This process will not be quick and is likely not to be efficient. But we know that the value of efficiency is actually an element in the culture of white supremacy. Efficiency is a value in a culture of scarcity. Efficiency is a value in an economic culture. Efficiency is not a virtue in matters of faith. We need to move to a culture grounded in spirit, in which we live out of generosity and into abundance.
Fifth, people of color and indigenous people carry extra water in a multicultural community, and particularly in that community engaged in transformation. You hear my hesitation in reading, because I'm here reading this and feeling my back at the same time. And I said, what a real metaphor this is. We therefore need extra space and additional support. And when people of color staff are called on outside of their job responsibilities to provide resources and wisdom, they need additional compensation as well.
Much of what we have to pass on, as you've heard, is of a cautionary nature. But the final message we would pass on is a message of hope. There is a reason that people of color have become Unitarian Universalists from the very beginnings of this faith and still today. There is a fundamental hope in our values and our aspirations that speaks to persons across the boundaries of race and culture and language and economic circumstance and ability. It is the empowerment in our Unitarian legacy and the love of our Universalist promise that draws people to us and that keeps us here. It is our culture, not our theology, that has been our biggest obstacle. And because that is so true, our final message is a message of hope, because we can change our culture if we have the will to do it.
Many communities are watching Unitarian Universalism again as we engage this work. They are watching. They are watching because they are looking for hope. What will be different this time? They want us to succeed because they know that our struggles will soon be their struggles. Both for us and for those around us, the time is not fundamentally about problems. Not about problems, but about our promise. It's fundamentally about hope. The final element of our charge is to ensure a smooth transition to a new president. We have worked hard to keep the candidates informed of our work. We have shared our concerns with all three of them in regular meetings. But here in New Orleans, leadership will pass to one of them.
What model of leadership will emerge? A few elements of our own leadership may be worthy of note. First, woman in our presidency. It's worth applauding. First, layperson in our presidency. First out queer person in our presidency. That'd be me. First person with ability limitations in our presidency. First co-equal team leadership in our presidency. Perhaps we have helped to open up, to broaden the image of what leadership looks like in our faith. Perhaps, no, certainly, that's a good thing.
We have worked diligently and we believe responded to our charge in all of the ways we could in 11 weeks. We would be less than honest if we pretended that our tasks have not weighed heavily on our shoulders and our spirits at times. But it has been a privilege to serve and a great privilege to serve together. We end our service than with gratitude. We have heard and felt the willingness of this community to engage, to not let this time of opportunity slip away. And we find ourselves convinced that we can move through this period together. And we therefore end our service in hope. And we thank you.
You know, there are times in your life when you get smart and you get lucky. There we have it. We've got other great news to share this morning. I have the great pleasure of introducing the Beacon Press Report. As many of you know, Beacon Press has long been the UU's voice to the wider world. I'm happy to see, as others have said, that the press continues to flourish and to do so much good work. Here to tell you about some of the successes this year is our own Helen Atwan, who has been director of Beacon since 1995. Helen?
Wow, that was amazing. Amazing. I just talk about a hard act to follow. But it's also, I just want to say that it has been such a privilege and a pleasure to work with these three inspired leaders. And I just wanted to call out how much they brought us and how grateful we on staff are for their leadership as well. So now more than ever, we can start the slideshow? Yes. We have really learned the meaning of that expression since last November. The bad news is that progressive people across the nation need help, resources, understanding, and spiritual support. The good news is we've got the books for them. There is virtually no front in this resistance campaign where we don't have books and experts, where we haven't had a voice. This is your voice. This is the voice of Unitarian Universalism. And this isn't just measured in book sales, but in how many times our books are reviewed, how many times our authors speak to audiences live, on TV, on radio, in print media, and all over the social media. We've done 2 full-page print ads in The Nation and 1 in Harper's, and millions of online impressions worth of ads with The Nation and Harper's, and independently. We are reminding progressive thinkers that books are a vital resource in these troubled times, not just our books, but hey, especially Beacon. We're promoting our backlist, that is our older titles, as resources for resistance on Facebook, Twitter, and half a dozen other social media platforms. The campaigns include advertising online and in print, and of course, are, people are responding. Our backlist sales were up almost 35% since the election. That's a lot of books we sold. And the hits just keep on coming. Our most popular blog of the month, Speaking Truth to Trump, included Beacon authors Anita Hill, Reverend William Barber, Aviva Chomsky, Roxanne Dunbar-Ortiz, Christopher Emdin, Eboo Patel, and many others. Our associate publisher, Tom Halleck, did a powerful post on the special role of publishers in these troubled times, which was picked up and reposted widely. Really proud of that. Oh, and by the way, we had a post by Meryl Streep on public education. So I encourage all of you to sign up for our Beacon Press UU newsletter, which will keep you completely up to date, by texting Beacon, in all caps, to 66866. Just follow the instructions and you will be signed up on your preferred email to get notices of what's going on at Beacon Press. I think you'll want to stay with us on this. And of course, do read Beacon Broadside. Are we on the next slide? Yes, okay. But we seem to have missed Reverend Barber. And it may be just because I've missed my pages. Justice for Immigrants. I am completely messed up. Thank you. That was very sweet of you. So, of course, our authors are defending immigrants and resisting Islamophobia and defending the rights of indigenous people and all those who work with them. And more than ever, since the appointment of Betsy DeVos, resisting, yes, I like that hiss, resisting the privatization of our public schools and the corporatization of public education. We're working overtime on these urgent issues with three new books. These 3 new books are coming out in the next 9 months. Now we get to Reverend Resistance. Love that title. And I'm sure I don't need to say a lot about Reverend Barber to this crowd. He's been all over the traditional and social media since the election. Keep an eye out for his new book, Revive Us Again, which will be out from Beacon in spring of 2018. The book is a series of sermons and speeches that lays out his groundbreaking vision for organizing across racial, economic, and religious lines, paired with essays from leading activists in his Moral Mondays movement who write about implementing ideas in an age of division. And how about that New York Times front page, above the fold, full color photo of Reverend Barber that just was like 10 days ago. It was amazing. And he was on Trevor Noah. Would it surprise you to hear that even more readers are turning to Viktor Frankl's classic than ever? So we've published an edition specifically for young adults, and it's already receiving spectacular welcome. One of our great strengths as a publisher is the ability to respond to the social and political climate in 3 ways. To lift books out of our extensive catalog of titles published over a century and a half, and re-promote them, and sometimes reissue them in new formats or with new introductions, as we did here with this entirely new edition of Frankel, as we did with the classic Alice Childress book, like One of the Family, with a new introduction by Roxane Gay, Or we sign new books that speak to the moment and get them out as quickly as possible, as we're doing with a new book by Frances Moore Lappé, known to many of you as the author of Diet for a Small Planet, and Adam Eichen, called Daring Democracy. Look for that in just 3 more months. And of course, sometimes we're just prescient. For those of you who haven't been around as long as I have, both at the UUA or on the planet, we published a landmark book about trans people in 1996, right after I arrived at Beacon, called Transgender Warriors by the wonderful Leslie Feinberg. So now 2 new books carry on that proud tradition. Jill Soloway, known to many of you as the creator of Transparent, the TV series, called At the Broken Places, Profoundly Vulnerable and Brave, a necessary and beautiful new book. And of course, we've received amazing praise and press for You're in the Wrong Bathroom. Now more than ever, we need books like this. The alt-right, stand your ground, 2 of dozens of phrases that we need to resist. I am really proud of our community of authors and how they show up, stand up, speak up, and resist. And actually now more than ever on the opinion page of the New York Times, we've had something like 10 op-ed pieces by Beacon authors since the election. And they've been about everything. Most recently, our wonderful author, Dr. Danielle Ofri, had a piece on the op-ed page about how doctors, nurses, the entire medical profession needed to stand up against the new healthcare law. And she called it, we need a doctor's march on Washington. And people responded so spontaneously and so urgently to her that overnight, with a little bit of help from us and other on her social media team, she created an entire network, a website, a Twitter feed, and accounts on Facebook and Twitter, so that the medical profession could be alerted to this movement and they could quickly get in touch with their legislators to say, we've got to stop this. We're going to take 24 million people off health care in America. And it's been fantastic. If you're on social media yourself, look up Dr. Danielle Ofri and follow her and support and retweet her work. But it's really been a very grassroots and very rewarding movement. I'm running out of time, so I better move on. Beacon had a great year. I think you heard that from Lucia Santini. We've had our 15th year of surpluses in a row, but these are the stats that should mean the most. How our books and authors reach people here and abroad. We couldn't have done it without the support of the UUA, without our longtime and new friends at the UUWF program at Shelter Rock, without help and guidance from the UU funding panel, without an outstanding staff of remarkable and dedicated individuals, a staff that has grown stronger as it has grown more diverse. And of course, without the support evidenced here, thanks to all of you in the UU community. We are so proud to be here with you in this time of resistance and rejoicing. Thank you for sending me.
If you wondered what you were going to read for the rest of the summer, I think your list has now been compiled. And you can buy most of them right in the exhibit hall. Every year we have the great joy of welcoming UU leaders from around the world, and we extend their gratitude to them for coming and being with us. Many have traveled a very long distance to share their experience, their wisdom, and their faithful solidarity during challenging times. And some of them were not granted visas to come here. So in this time of welcoming our guests, please let's show our joy and our appreciation. I introduce Eric Cherry to introduce our international guests.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Madam Moderator. And while we say that these leaders who have joined us from around the world are guests, it's an important reminder to American Unitarian Universalists that hospitality is our privilege and responsibility when people journey here. In fact, our guests are leaders of our global faith. They are your leaders. And as we welcome them, please hold in your heart the commitment they bring to the faith we share every day. And we hope you will be inspired to explore how your UU community can find itself within the global UU story and engage supportively. Such a privilege to introduce to you Reverend Tet Gallardo. Reverend Tet Gallardo represents the 28 congregations of the UU Church of the Philippines. She also serves in its Constitutional Commission, currently transitioning to a new constitution. Toribio Quimada started with 7 churches in the Philippines in 1955. He was killed in 1987 for his social justice work. Philippine UU churches have a majority of people of color, using at least 4 languages. Reverend Tet serves as the minister of one of those congregations, the Bikutan congregation, where 70% are children, and young adults govern the Council of Deacons with 2 20-year-olds. Reverend Tet also serves in the consulting team of the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists, and she was this year's Baloch Scholar at Star King School for the ministry. Reverend Darihun Kriyam is minister of the Unitarian Union of Northeast India and its financial secretary. Darihun was ordained in August 2002 after 10 months training at the UUA. She is the first female minister among the Khasi people. Leadership in the Unitarian Union is generally lay-led, has only a few ministers and assistant ministers, and Darihun serves 8 churches and travels a lot. The shared and cooperative ministry with lay leaders is a blessing for the growth of the churches. Darihun travels to her churches with her husband and the 3 children, who are now 12, 9, and 6. The UUNEI is moving forward. Its motto, To Nang Groy, means keep on progressing. Reverend David Geru is the Deputy Bishop of the Hungarian Unitarian Church. In the 1990s, David was a leader of the Unitarian youth movement, and after graduating from theological school, he served at the headquarters of the Transylvanian Unitarian Church as the counselor for church administration. Since 2009, he also serves as a parish minister of the Unitarian Church of Kolosh. David's first involvement with global Unitarianism was within the International Association for Religious Freedom, the IARF. Later, he assisted the international partnerships of the Transylvanian Unitarian congregations through the UU Partner Church Council. In 2000-2001, he lived in Boston and worked for the UUA International Office. In 2009, he was elected the Secretary of the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists, and since 2014, he has served as the president of the ICUU, the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists. Inga Brandes from Germany was born and raised in a Unitarian family. Her first contact with the global Unitarian Universalist family was as early as 1990 when she acted as a volunteer for the International Association for Religious Freedom Congress in Hamburg, Germany. She has served the Unitarian movement for more than 20 years in various positions and is currently co-president of Unitarians, Religious Society of Free Faith. The German Unitarians descended from free Protestant congregations and are a deliberately lay-led Unitarian movement. The community's religious and spiritual foundations and aims are developed by a permanent working group of elected members as the Spiritual Council, and since 2014, Inga serves as a member at large on the Executive Committee of the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists. Vida Ng is Executive Director of the Canadian Unitarian Council. Vida has been a Unitarian for 25 years, and her work and community experience has been within the not-for-profit sector, working mainly with vulnerable populations and violence prevention, and for the last 5 years as the ED of the Canadian Unitarian Council. The CUC is the National Association of Canadian UU Congregations, which has recently experienced some big changes. The survival of a political audit by Canada Revenue Agency, a change in charitable purposes, and most recently in May, the first annual general meeting that was accessible electronically to all congregations for voting and participation. Perhaps the most celebrated change is the new vision for the CUC. As Canadian Unitarian Universalists, we envision a world where our interdependence calls us to love and justice. Welcome, Vida. Reverend Jorge Espinel is the director of the Latino ministry, Ministerio Latino of the Church of the Larger Fellowship. This ministry serves our Latinx and Spanish-speaking communities around the world. This ministry provides resources and opportunities for Latinx people to connect to each other and explore our faith. The ministry is also supported by the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists and the International Office of the UUA.
Buenos días, soy Jorge Espinel y soy el director del Ministerio Latino de la Iglesia de la Gran Comunidad, que sirve a la comunidad latina e hispanoparlante. Este ministerio provee oportunidades y recursos para que los miembros de esta comunidad puedan explorar our faith, nuestra fe en nuestro propio idioma. Este ministerio recibe el apoyo de la Oficina Internacional del UUA y del Consejo Internacional de Unitarios Universalistas. Me encantaría conectar con cualquiera de ustedes interesados en apoyar este ministerio.
Reverend Lara Fuchs is a Canadian and Swiss lifelong Unitarian Universalist serving since 2013 on the Executive Committee of the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists. She has, just last month, received an MDiv from Meadville Lombard Theological School, been ordained by the Unitarian Church in Westport, Connecticut, and was welcomed into preliminary fellowship by the UUA just recently. Lara will now return to her home in Switzerland, where in 2010 she founded a UU fellowship in Basel to chart a new path of international community ministry. As our moderator mentioned, there were 2 additional people we hoped very much to have at General Assembly with us this year. Reverend Fulgence Jagijimana, living in Winnipeg, Canada, through Burundi, where he had started a Unitarian church in Bujumbura, was denied a visa to come to the United States, as was Samir Kaldi, a Syrian who discovered Unitarian Universalism a decade ago and has now found refuge in British Columbia in Canada, was also denied a visa to come to the United States. I hope that you will carry them in your heart, especially at the public witness later today, where love resists policies that are wrong and need to be changed. Finally, visit us online to find doorways into the global UU story, including ways to join the global UU celebration of the 450th anniversary of the Edict of Torda and the upcoming meeting and conference of the International Council of UUs in Northeast India in February 2018. Welcome into the global UU story, and please welcome global UU leaders from around the world at General Assembly this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you for bringing us that joy with a couple of moments of thought-provoking, perhaps sadness, for those who were denied their visas. So let's take a deep breath. We've had a lot of information so far this morning. Thank goodness it's Friday. And let's do a little singing.
Why, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Once again, I'm Leon Burke. I'm your music coordinator for GA, and good morning, GA. Thank you. Today, I'm proud to be a human being. That's UUMN for Unitarian Universalist Musicians Network, for my certified music leaders who walked last night in the service of the living tradition. And I invited one of them to be my co-conspirator, pianist, for this morning. And please say hello to Mr. Jed Levine. Now, would you please rise in body or spirit, and please join me in singing De Colores, something not in English. Step out of your comfort zone, people. Canten conmigo, por favor. Un y dos. De colores se visten los campos en la primavera. De colores son los pajaritos que vienen de afuera. De colores es alargorices debemos lucir, y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan. eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. En inglés, all the colors, yes, the black and the white and the red and the brown and the yellow. All the colors of people who smile and shake hands and say hello. All the colors, yes, the colors of people who know that their freedom is won. All the colors are bound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. All the colors are bound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. En español, de colores, sí, de blanco y negro y rojo y azul y castaño. Son colores de gente que ríe y estrecha la mano. Son colores de gente que sabe de la libertad. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Así. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Siéntense, por favor.
We have a special guest with us this morning, so we're going to break into our schedule for a few minutes because this is an opportunity we did not want to miss. I'd like to introduce again to you Lena Gardner from Black Lives of UU and one of our beloved elders, Dr. Sanyika, to tell us a little bit about his story.
I don't have too much to say this morning. I just want to extend deep gratitude to my elder. We call him Baba, which is a name of reverence and honoring. It was so amazing to meet Baba for the first time at the Blue Convening in March. And since then, we've had many rich discussions. And we brought him to General Assembly to do the workshops, to share his story with us about what happened in the late 60s, about lessons learned and how to build intergenerationally and how we grow from here. So without further ado, Baba.
Good morning, Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly. Come on, you can do better than that. It's a good day that history has made, and let all the earth be silent and give praises to that which is holy and sacred. I cannot, express to you my profound gratitude, thanks, and appreciation for your giving me this opportunity. I say that because the last time I addressed your General Assembly was almost 50 years ago. 50 years ago. That infamous General Assembly of 1969 in Boston, which had been preceded by the 1968 General Assembly in Cleveland, where the Black Affairs Council was awarded $250,000 for 4 years, or so it thought. Proceeded by the Seattle General Assembly, which I did not attend. So I have a lot of mixed emotions, but you're in my home city. And I want to thank you for bringing me home. And when I knew you were in New Orleans, the Spirit told me you got to come home. Now, I was that guy when you all did the parade, in that aisle over there saying, shake your booty, shake what your mama gave you. And I could not resist at the very end joining that second line to dance with my New Orleans family among my Unitarian Universalist friends. Lord, have mercy. So thank you for bringing me home. But let me also say, I come today because my heart is heavy, and it is heavy because the person who introduced me to UUism in 1962, Dr. Albert D. Orlando, has never been given his proper due. That is my humble opinion, that history needs to correct that this is where I learned what Unitarian Universalism was. His home and his church were bombed, and his membership in the Urban League was taken from him because he was accused of being a communist. How ridiculous. That's an injustice that we hope will be corrected one day. So I want to thank you for that reason, and I just feel good being among you, although there are all kinds of things running through my mind about how you will respond to what it is I want to share. I don't have time to do an adequate job, but pray with me as we try to do a little bit. But you know, I have been observing the transformation of the cultural practices within this denomination for a while. While we have been gone almost 50 years, we have not been completely remote. 1,500 of us left the denomination because of the internal contradictions of what we called then structural racism and institutional racism, which we appropriately term today as white supremacy. But we left for those reasons, but we have not been immune. And I heard some singing in here like I've never heard before. I heard people using the word God. I said, wait a minute, am I in the right place? I wanted to shout hallelujah. Glory. Glory to her name and his. But I heard something in particular, excuse me, which really confirmed why I am here today. I heard something said last night, there is a new name in Zion. A new name in Zion. It is pronounced B-L-U-U, blue. And as those of us in the movement of the 60s say, from bucking back to blue. Buck was the Black Unitarian Universalist Caucus. Back was his Black Affairs Council. That's those of us who left 50 years ago. And today, there has been a revival of that movement for which we give thanks to the Holy and all of you who are responsible for it. So for us, it's from bucking back to blue. And we are proud to say that the torch has been passed to a new generation, born out of civil rights, born out of the contradictions of this country, but smart enough to see that the justice movement does not end. And I am so extremely proud of you today because you have fulfilled that historical mission that Frantz Fanon talked about in The Wretched of the Earth when he said every generation in its relative obscurity must find its own mission, confirm it or deny it. That mission has been confirmed. You did a good thing, but it ain't over yet. But I am just feeling so good, like somebody said last night, you really have come home, haven't you? This used to be my home, New Orleans, but Katrina swept me away. And Unitarian Universalism used to be my spiritual home. White supremacy swept me away. So some people said, you've really come home twice, huh? Well, part of my life will always be touched by the experience that I had with you. And while I am not officially a part of you, you can never take me away from you. So I give myself back to the struggle, not the structure, but to the struggle and the justice that needs to be done. The second thing that I want to share is that history has a way of choosing us. We don't choose history. We are used by history to reconcile humanity unto itself. Unitarian Universalism at its finest and at its best is an instrument to transform humanity so that it can evolve to its highest level of consciousness and potential. At its best. And it must constantly be vigilant to denounce all forms of human oppression, exploitation, degradation, domination, and control in any form that it comes. UUism at its best is a transformative agent for justice and liberation and peace in the world. At its best. But it can't do that if it marginalizes humanity. If it leaves anybody out at the table, you cannot fulfill that mission. You cannot fulfill that mission by being partial to some and not fair with all. Justice and equity must define who you are and what you do with who you claim to be. Because it's not just saying what you believe that matters, it's what you do with it. That's why I love Brother Jesus so much and people who follow Jesus. I ain't talking about the institutional Christian church here, but I'm talking about the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and He has called me to liberate the oppressed. As a matter of fact, if He were here today, He'd be hanging out with y'all, I think. The second point is that white supremacy still exists 50 years later. Don't think I haven't been reading all those emails. I know something is percolating in the spirit that's challenging power and principality, and blue is trying to speak truth to power. Truth to power. And you need to be in full and absolute support of that social movement as you ought to with others, but it begins with trust. It begins with you believing that the virus of racism and white supremacy is still around us. And it metastasizes. It sneaks up on you when you ain't looking. Excuse my English, I'm a professor, I'm not supposed to speak like that. But I'm also a cultural vernacular, so I can talk the way I choose in my hometown. So we must always be vigilant and look first of all within ourselves, because the greatest contradiction we have is the contradiction of the self. You say one thing, you do something else. You claim one thing, you unclaim it when it is comfortable. You know, eliminating white supremacy is an uncomfortable business because white privilege has existed for so long that cognitive dissonance is a part of our culture. We must dig deep into our human spirits and say, absolutely, we are the new humanity becoming, so we can't tolerate the old world as it exists. And guess what? 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue is not in control of the world. There's a higher power. There's a higher power that I report to, and it ain't of this earth. The peace that I have doesn't come from this place. It's beyond, and I invite you to join that journey with me. The third thing that I wanted to share is that self-determination and empowerment of people has been proven to be the antibody against the exploitation. Self-determination is a natural right that people have. So when we proclaimed it 50 years ago and it made some people uncomfortable, so be it. The discomfort was against the traditional injustice of the UUA and its leadership at 25 Beacon Street, which was the myth castle, as we called it. That was the injustice, but we got caught in the confusion about who runs this institution. Should it be you, the UUA General Assembly, or that board of directors, which was insensitive to the need for justice and transformation at that time? And so self-determination all across all religious denominations, churches, universities, institutions, have affirmed self-determination, people's right to decide their own destiny. And if you want a relationship with me, you must respect my right to control my own destiny and to determine it. You cannot, on the one hand, claim yourself to be a justice warrior in which the eighth principle ought to be part of who you are. Oh, you didn't think I knew that, huh? And at the same time, deny the right of self-determination to people, not just inside the UUA, but throughout the whole of this world and this society. That is what people are struggling for, self-determination and empowerment to be the finest human beings that they have been made to be. the fourth thing that I want to share is that UUism is still under construction. Y'all know about under construction? You have not achieved the perfect state. And there is no exceptionalism. You see, there's different kinds of liberals. There's the pro-libs, as we call them, the mod-libs, and the con-libs. The pro-libs are progressive. They affirm the right of self-determination and empowerment for people and justice unconditionally all the time. The mod-libs say, but. Conservative libs say, we can't go there. We can't have that in our church. So we learned that there was that going on, but UUism is therefore still under construction because the historical forces are moving forward, and you're not going to be on the tail end, but trying to be on the front end. You wanted to claim Dr. King, but you didn't understand the radical nature of his politics. And so in 1967, when we took over that conference and formed the Black Caucus, it was our right to do so. But the reason we did so is because we were sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired of those con liberals tricking us, saying one thing and doing something else. That's why we said no negotiation. No negotiation. Take it or leave it, but no negotiation. Let me say this, and I've got one more point, and then I'll be sitting down. And that is that being under construction means you are constantly aware. It means that you are constantly responsive to the demands around you, that you do not think you have reached that perfect state where there's something called Unitarian Universalist exceptionalism, because there is no UU exceptionalism. You are still under construction, and there's nothing wrong with still being constructed. As we say in my tradition, the Most High is not finished with you yet. You still have a long ways to go, so don't be infatuated with yourself, please. My fifth and final point is that when we were within this denomination, we initiated a dialogue on something called Black humanism. It has gone all over the place since then, and I apologize for not finishing that story, but our hearts were so heavy and our minds were so distant that we chose to practice Black humanism rather than bother Unitarian Universalists about trying to understand it. When we left in 1969, that was not a walkout. It was an exodus. It was an exodus because we no longer felt we had a home. We no longer felt the love and care. We no longer felt that Black humanism was on the agenda to be discussed. You see, because we've always said human agency is at the center of transformation, but you can't do it without divine reconciliation. We say we can be theists and non-theists. I know some of you want to argue that point, but we can talk about that. I don't mind talking about it because we were no longer talking about kindergarten theology with some spookistic white guy sitting up in no sky. That's not what we were talking about. We were criticizing the church across the board, not just UUism, but we invite that conversation in the modern era so that we can all modernize our understanding that there can be no humanism without discussing Black humanism. It can't be. Why? Because we are a part of the human family who has contributed to the discourse on what it means to be human. So we invite that conversation with everybody who claims to have some form of humanism in their background, but you must remember you have a history of Christian humanism in your background too. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say that there is nothing but humanity, because once you do that, you reinforce white supremacy without even knowing you're doing it. So the conversation about Black humanism is really a conversation about salvation. But it's about the salvation of all humanity, because we are a part, just like Black lives matter, Black humanism matters, but so does all humanity. So does all other humanism that seeks justice and transformation and peace. There is a book that I now am able to write and to narrate this story because of what you have allowed me to do with you here today. I've tried it in the past, but I didn't have writer's frozen pen. I had spiritual frozen pen. My soul was not anchored in the Lord. It was disturbed. It was uneven. Today, I feel my soul is free to tell you this story from the depths of my heart and my mind. So I will promise you, I will do that book. I promise you, I will do that book.
You are a remarkable man.
Let me finish one sentence.
Of course, take your time.
And I say to all of you who were my friends, all my LRY colleagues, Bill Sinkford was a young man then. He's not as young as he used to be. Robbie Isaac, Denny Davis, Larry Ladd, all of y'all who I've seen and not seen, thank you for your love and friendship over the years. I appreciate seeing you again. It's like a marvelous homecoming experience that I have had. And I simply say to all of you this: lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring, ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty, facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on. Let us march on, Unitarian Universalists. Lead us with the rest of all humanity into that beloved community that we all desire. Let us march on. Let us march on till victory is won. Hallelujah. Ashe.
My friends, we just went to church. Thank you so much, Dr. Sanyika and Lena. Those were words that many of us have needed to hear over and over again. In the year 2014, I want to break into song. In the year, anyway, I can't sing, but it just came to my head, so I thought I'd share it. Sorry, Kalani. The Commission on Appraisal chose class as its three-year study topic. Their goal was to examine how class affects our movement, with emphasis on intersectionality, inclusion, congregational culture, and how different class roles can aid our work for justice and for liberation. Tim Murphy wants to come and sing with me.
Yeah, that would be great. We need a little break before we do the commission, so can we go to the panel? Is that going to work?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We need a little break before we go to the commission, and so we're going to go to the, pick a word. We're going to go to the panel. Let's go to the panel. Panel, let's go. That panel. Oh, I'm so sorry. One moment, please. We went to church. Apparently, I didn't go to school. Sorry. The Beloved Conversations panel. All right, now we're on it. Beloved Conversations is an experiential curriculum that provides a space to reform and fuse the brokenness of racism into new patterns of thought and behavior, ushering in social and spiritual healing. New ways of being are learned through the actions of conversation and probing dialogue. The program was created by Dr. Mark Hicks And he's here with us today with a panel of beloved conversation leaders to tell us more. You are a lovely panel. Thank you for showing up.
Good morning, General Assembly. Good morning. It's so good to be with you and to have witnessed that moment that we just had. Amazing, amazing. My name is Mark Hicks, and I am the director of the FOS Collaborative Laboratory for Innovation in Faith Formation. The FOS Collaborative is part of the educational offerings at our UU Seminary, Meadville Lombard in Chicago. The namesake for this UU nonprofit is Sophia Lyon Foz. If you're not aware of her legacy, she was what I would call a redwood in religious education. She was a spirited entrepreneur who challenged the status quo about how we teach our people to integrate faith into their daily lives. She famously said, "Life becomes religious whenever we make it so." The FOS Collaborative develops a wide array of programs designed to do exactly that. From teaching UUs how to integrate spiritual depth into social justice work, to preparing our congregations how to engage multi-faith partners, the Collaborative brings an educator's mind to some of the thorny and complex problems we face in our congregation and in our world. So Beloved Conversations was commissioned, but when one of our largest congregations asked for help in learning how racism and white supremacy block our capacity to be fully human and fully humane with people from different racial and cultural backgrounds. Over the last 4 years, we have been working on interpersonal, institutional, and systematic systems of supremacy. From that single commission, we have been making gains. We are in over 100 congregations that are Unitarian Universalist, Jewish, and Quaker. So we are here today, including members of our amazing staff, to share a few stories about what we have learned over the last 4 years. And here to take us into that storytelling is Reverend Ashley Horan, who is the learning coordinator for Beloved Conversations. Ashley.
In this moment, as Unitarian Universalists across the country are confronting the legacy of white supremacy that lives in the helices of our DNA, we are aware that transforming congregations is long-haul work. To sustain ourselves and to be truly effective catalysts for transformation, we need deep wellsprings of resilience, as well as concrete skills for organizing and partnership. We need strong relationships within and beyond our congregations. We need to acknowledge that faith formation and spiritual support sometimes look very different for people of color and for white people. And we must minister competently and prophetically to all of those who call our faith home. This morning, a panel of leaders who have all been using Beloved Conversations as a tool for the journey will share reflections on their experiences. I want to welcome Rhonda Brown, a National Beloved Conversations retreat leader who has also led multiple rounds of the program in her own congregation at East Shore in Bellevue, Washington. Reverend Leslie Takahashi, who has been a retreat leader for the Bay Area cluster of congregations, as well as in her own congregation, Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church in Walnut Creek, California. And Robin Pugh, Vice President of Loretta and Director of Lifespan Religious Education at the UU Church at Washington Crossing in Titusville, New Jersey, which just completed its first round of Beloved Conversations this spring. So first, yes, we're lucky. Wonderful panel. Would you please reflect on any changes or transformations that you have seen occur in your congregations as a result of your participation in Beloved Conversations?
Yes. What I want to say is that Beloved Conversations gives people a way of perceiving. It's like a seventh sense. And once the hearts are open, people who complete the program report they see things that they have never seen before. They see discrimination in the grocery store. They see aggressions on public transportation. They see dynamics within their own families and within their own churches, which have more and more a mixed racial palette. We have just, in the congregation that I serve, completed our 4th round, offering it each January to June for 4 years. We have about 10% of the congregation who has completed it. And last month, we had our first alumni gathering, and we talked about how Beloveds could continue to change congregational culture as our new strategic plan includes an aspiration to be exuberantly multicultural.
All right.
Beloved Conversations has given new tools to leaders already seasoned in multicultural dialogue, but it has also traveled with some on their first journey into this conversation. About 3 weeks into every session, people start grabbing me before service to tell me that they now see things that they didn't see before. And once woke, people tend to stay woke.
We started our first Beloved Conversations workshop in the fall of 2013. The first thing that Beloved Conversations did was to create a firm foundation to deepen the discussion and commitment to racial justice at East Shore. Beloved Conversations also gave attendees the opportunity to join together and take action. That's what people wanted to know, is how to take action to combat racial injustice. In 2015, this started with a small group of Beloved Conversations attendees who decided to organize a public witness group to support Black Lives Matter. And I have to say that the two that started that are here, sitting over there. Woo! So this group meets every Sunday at a busy intersection near the church and displays signs of support for Black Lives Matter. And that's when the real racial justice discussion began, as people became challenged or curious about the Black Lives Matter movement. Beloved Conversations attendees then started a monthly dialogue for the congregation called Conversations About Race. It's created a forum for deep and honest discussion about racial issues. Our last discussion was held the week before the recent white supremacy teach-in that we had. And we had over 50 members of the congregation come and speak honestly about racism. To me, Beloved Conversations has been a catalyst which has helped East Shore to learn, grow, and engage in our community in a much more powerful way.
Our congregation's racial justice work had been dormant for a decade, but we called a new minister in the summer of 2015, the summer of Ferguson. 25% of our congregation began Beloved Conversations a week after the election last November and wrapped up the program right before the white supremacy teach-in. Our congregation has changed tremendously over the last 3 years, but Beloved Conversations gave us the container we needed to do this work well. Our participants were 30 to 80 years old, and though everyone didn't end up in the same place, everyone undoubtedly moved further along the continuum of understanding privilege, race, and white supremacy. Allies and advocates were created, members of color were re-energized, relationships were fostered. Investment in what the church can do in the world and how we can be brave for and with one another has been felt in every corner of the congregation. This is true about conversations about race, but so much more. One of our facilitators of color said, quote, white people are beginning to see what has always been visible to congregants of color. Early on in the program, there was a lot of defensiveness when people of color would name things about how white privilege plays out in the church. A mere few months later, I noticed the open dialogues, the willingness to challenge long-held assumptions, and be true allies. I love that my small group has chosen to continue to meet because of the positive transformation, genuine conversations, and a commitment to racial justice work, unquote.
Reflecting back on your Beloved Conversations experiences, what resources, spiritual, infrastructural, programmatic, do you and your congregations need to sustain yourselves for this long-haul work of dismantling white supremacy?
One reason that I'm an advocate for Beloved Conversations is that it teaches white folks that they can learn about oppression without using their fellow congregants of color as their only teachers. In the world in which we live today, you can watch a movie or read a book or watch a TED Talk, you can go to an art exhibit, and through that, the stories and experiences different than yours can jump out and enter into dialogue with you. And this is important because the people of color in our faith so often do end up being those teachers, being the accountability mechanism, doing the spiritual domestic work, as Reverend Dr. Rosemary Bray McNatt puts it. Our UUs of color need their own conversations about how we have taken on those messages of the dominant culture and about how they've damaged our own senses of power and agency and our own sense of our leadership. We need rescue and healing from the funhouse mirror distortion where leadership as a person of color in this association is. And we need places where we can talk authentically about the pain in our lives and our families' lives without someone saying, wow, your life is a mess. Oppression has a long half-life. And trauma is transmitted generation to generation. For us to live into our wholeness, we need spaces of deep healing, brave spaces where pain can be heard and held.
As a lay leader, one of the most important resources that I work with in doing the Beloved Conversations workshop is working with our minister. The deep work of tackling racism requires a level of introspection that can be daunting at times and painful. I'm fortunate to have great support from a minister who makes herself available to provide pastoral support for not only workshop attendees, but also for the facilitators. For the long-haul work of dismantling white supremacy, as we heard today, we need to find ways to give voice to the experiences of people of color in the wider UU community. And I think that that can help white UUs to gain a better understanding of what changes are needed. And in addition, I would love to see an expansion of the Beloved Conversation Network. We have a lot of people that are alumni of Beloved Conversations, and allow the attendees and facilitators to connect, share best practices, and build additional modules.
Our congregation finished Beloved Conversations just over a month ago, but we're focused and excited about what's next. We've created a People of Color Circle that meets once a month for spiritual deepening and connection that can be, but doesn't have to be, about this work. Maintaining this space and creating other forms of support for our members of color will continue to be vital to our work and the health of all in our community. Going forward, we hope for something that will draw people who are resistant or afraid into racial justice work. We're also yearning for a next step curriculum that keeps those who are committed but weary, engaged, and resilient within a community they sometimes would rather not work so hard in. Lastly, we have learned a lot about what we want to change to address white supremacy within our congregational system, which can feel overwhelming, but we don't have many or any resources on how it could look. We'd love to be mentored by another UU community that has made successful cultural changes to model ourselves after.
I want to add my deep appreciation to these four amazing leaders who are bringing this work to our people. Thank you very much. We all know that racism is as old as history itself. We also know that dismantling racism at all levels in our lives requires the development of intentional skills and deep, deep spiritual resources. Beloved Conversations is one important tool among many for combating white supremacy. And it's thrilling to see how our people are applying these insights into every aspect of their lives. As you see this wonderful brochure here that says, "What are you doing today to dismantle white supremacy?" is a resource, an educational resource that we have developed and will have available at the back of the hall. We encourage you to stop by our booth to spend time with us. And if you have participated in Beloved Conversations and would like to do some professional development, come to our booth and find out how you can do more. Thank you all for this good work. Thank you. Thank you.
Mark, thank you, and thank you for the panel presentation. It was wonderful. There is some sort of force in the universe that had this panel switch to this time, because I really did feel like I wanted to start to sing, and I can't carry a tune in a bucket with a handle, so it's a good thing that Tim Murphy ran up here, because you would all have left. So let me start again without any singing and say that in 2014, the Commission on Appraisal chose class as its 3-year study topic. Their goal was to examine how class affects our movement, with emphasis on intersectionality, inclusion, congregational culture, and how different class roles can aid our work for justice and liberation. The Commission engaged many, many people from a variety of groups within the UUA. To tell you more, I'd like to introduce the Reverend Kalani Casella, the Chairman of the Commission on Appraisal.
Good morning, everyone. Looks like we're having a really good time this morning. We're on a roll, having some really good church up in here. So let's keep it rolling and let everyone in the great hall say, "Blessed be." Blessed be. Let everyone in the great hall say, "Ashe." Ashe. And finally, let everyone in the great hall say, "Amen." Well, I am Reverend Kalani Casella. I hail from Tampa, Florida, and I'm the chair of some Floridians in the house. And I am the chair of the Commission on Appraisal. The Commission on Appraisal is an independent study group of the UUA whose members are elected at General Assembly. And our task is to investigate an important issue facing the association, reflect upon our research and our findings, then report back to you, our constituency. This GA, we are here to share our most recent report titled Class Action, the Struggle of Class within the Unitarian Universalist Association. And we've concluded that class affects the ministries of the UUA at every level, from the vision of who we believe we are called to be and live out our principles and values, to the senior leadership of the institution. And while I'm at it, let us give a hand to the 3 presidents who have done such a great job for us today. Amen, amen. And it goes on to the members of our congregations and their friends and family who make us who we are. Class has many intersections, from socioeconomic status to gender and social orientation to age and ethnicity and vocation. The intersections are infinite. And as one of the most affluent faiths in the U.S., many within and beyond our faith believe that all UUs are well-to-do, or at least middle class. But this can't be further from the truth. Our association is made up of people from all classes, and we believe that our class differences should be a treasure from which to build our ministries and not a barrier to building beloved community. Can I get an amen on that? So having said that, we want to present one example of the hidden treasure that dwells among us so that you can better envision the possibilities of a classless UUA. This video was produced by our commissioners Kathleen Henry and Virginia Abraham, and it was filmed in the Provincetown, Massachusetts congregation. I invite you to enjoy this video presentation, which is about 8 minutes.
For Unitarian Universalists to fully address class and classism, acknowledging the reality of intersectionality enables us to look beyond poverty and economic status for other sources and causes of oppression. When we do, we realize that specific forms of oppression do not exist in isolation. Each is intrinsically linked to the relative power of groups within a system to accumulate, maintain, and control resources in society. We commit to overturning oppression, to confronting systems, and to be aware of the intersectionality underweaving society. And yet, we acknowledge it is the person-to-person, day-by-day relationship building that creates the foundation that changes the world. One person at a time, one pew at a time, until, in time, we all are one. Person to person, pew to pew, people to people. Jane and Bruce, best friends, from the Unitarian Universalist Meeting House in Provincetown, Massachusetts. Jane is an heiress. Think Downton Abbey style for childhood birthday parties. Bruce's father was the janitor where Bruce went to grammar school, one of his 3 jobs. There were 8 kids in his family, 6 boys. Think hand-me-downs. Bruce was a dancer, now a poet. One day a week, he mediates legal disputes in the Barnstable County Courthouse. He lives in Section 8 housing. He does not now, nor ever has had, 2 nickels to rub together. Yet, he is recognized as a leader by being elected the president of the board of the UU Meeting House of Provincetown, his 2nd time in that position. He is greatly admired by the congregation for his intelligence and is beloved for his kindness. Jane grew up to be a hospice nurse. Her childhood experiences rescuing her alcoholic mother prepared her well. She was a child of the 60s who put the ideals she learned in Quaker high school to the test in street protests. She owns homes. She has no financial need to work. She serves on nonprofit boards and volunteers for gritty jobs. She is a valued member of the UU Meeting House Pastoral Care Committee, the Safety Committee, the Worship Committee, the choir, and sometimes over her almost 35 years as a member of the congregation, she has served on the board. Her authenticity is warm and engaging, and her openness to all energizes her interactions because she is truly interested in you.
I grew up in Philadelphia in a very, very privileged household from a very moneyed family.
And I grew up in New England in a very wealthy town where my father was the janitor in the school system that I went through. And I'm one of the people who live on the other side of the tracks, basically.
And I grew up in a very wealthy neighborhood and was probably wealthier than 95% of the community. Childhood was really rather difficult. My mother was a major alcoholic, and there was a lot of craziness in my family, and I escaped that through nature and through the dogs, and we share that. I mean, we walk our dogs together all the time.
Yeah, and it's interesting because although there wasn't alcoholism in my family, because the 8 of us were living in one floor where 6 brothers shared a bedroom together. I would escape because the energy in the family was always either electric hollering and screaming or electric laughing and fooling around, and so I just needed some peace. So what I did is I'd go outside, I'd climb on the garage roof and hide up there, or I'd go out to the woods. So eventually, our lives brought us to here, in Provincetown.
Right.
I came to Provincetown because I was told I was going to be dead in 2 months. And at that point, since I didn't drop dead in those 2 months, I had lived right across the street here from the AIDS support group. They asked me one day to volunteer.
And I think the reason I went to nursing school was because I grew up taking care of my mom. So, and I came up here to get away from being my mother's daughter. Yeah.
And I think that the power of the epidemic, because it was so overwhelming, like 10% of the population was sick and or dying at that point, that made those of us who worked in the field bond really tightly.
That was a really, really hard time. And I mean, it was just devastating. And so that those of us who were caregivers would get together to support each other. And we really got to see each other's vulnerabilities and strengths. And there was a bond that just formed between us.
And I think that it also matured us very quickly.
Very much.
Everyone deals with death and dying, but when you deal with, death every 2 weeks for years, it changes you. And at some point, I believe he turned to me and said something like, "You know that James is wealthy as God," or something like that. And I said, "No, I didn't know that. I had no idea." And because, being a well-educated white male and living a life that could fly under the flag of white privilege, there was no evidence of difference between us.
Right. Yeah, I think it was a long time before I really realized
that I'm dirt poor.
really are, yeah. Right, right. And for me, I don't, I've often said that it's harder to come out as a rich person than it is as a lesbian.
That I had to process a lot of my own class prejudice in order to not allow it to damage our friendship.
Right.
And that takes work.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually happen all by itself because in our culture, class bias exists in both directions.
It does.
And coming from my direction, I knew I had bias about people who wealth.
Well, because it's absolutely true that, wealth is power, and it just, because I was born into this family, I get to be more powerful than others.
Yeah.
It's a truth.
No, and I think that from the perspective of being poor, that you live under the quiet belief that there's no way that someone with wealth could understand what your life is, and vice versa.
Right. Well, you were saying something about the food that you grew up with and asked me like what my mother cooked, and I was like, what? My mother didn't cook. We had a household staff.
Dinner was served by a butler.
So, I mean, there's a big difference.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it took years into our relationship where we could be comfortable enough where I could say, like, something like that, and we would laugh about it.
That you have constructed a life in which most of your time is spent either in nature and living with Jen, your wife, or doing things for the community. And we both seem to have chosen that that's how we're going to formulate our adult identities, separate from our childhood parentage.
And it's interesting, the composition of our board here at the Meeting House, because in most organizations, the board is comprised of people who are considered major donors, and that just doesn't exist in Provincetown. And at the Meeting House, we really aren't a group. We are both on the board, but we aren't a group that is formed around how much we're going to give financially. It's more, I think that this congregation and this town, are really very different, and it's more based, it's more talent based. It's been a journey, and I feel every day fortunate, and I love you like a sibling, and there isn't anything you don't know about me, and vice versa.
No, it's true. And down to some really...
Yeah, we know each other very, very well.
That's true. One of the other pieces in our friendship and our love for each other is the generosity that you have been able to give to me.
I think it's a relationship of mutuality. Because I can think of like so many times that you've come and helped me. You've helped me through major illness. You've helped me through. You knew me back when I was going through a breakup, and I've been with my wife for 25 years. We know each other.
Yeah, and Jen, your wife, actually sometimes refers to me as your husband.
Yes, yes.
In the early 1990s, and continuing for years, the Unitarian Universalist Meeting House of Provincetown volunteers took care of hundreds and hundreds of AIDS patients. They nursed them and saw them through their dying. The UUMH held their funerals. Bruce came to Provincetown when he was told his AIDS would kill him in 2 months. When it didn't, he became a caretaker. So did Jane. That's how Bruce and Jane met. person to person, pew to pew, people to people, one person at a time, one pew at a time, until in time we all are one.
Wasn't that fantastic? True beloved community, person to person, pew to pew. Yesterday during our breakout session, we invited members who were in attendance to share their personal class stories with a partner, and people built some real community and found some real connection. And today I will invite you to find someone that you don't know, or perhaps someone you would like to know better, and share your personal class story with them and spend some time listening as they share theirs with you. We also want to invite you to explore our report, Class Action, which is on sale in the GA bookstore, and you can also buy it online from Skinner House. Buy a copy for yourself and buy a copy for someone in your home congregation. Now, I'm also, in addition to an minister, an educator. So I want to give you some homework. And that is, are you ready? Are you ready? When you leave here, make a beeline and go to the bookstore and buy Class Action, The Struggle of Class in the UUA. Thank you very much, and enjoy the GA.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Reverend Kalani. That was wonderfully done. Founded in 1963 through the consolidation of Unitarian and Universalist women's organizations, the UU Women's Federation has evolved as an education, advocacy, and funding organization with a vital mission: to advance justice for women and girls and promote their spiritual growth. The UUWF is one of two associate member organizations of the UUA, along with the UUSC. Please welcome UUWF President Justice Wadner Smith.
Good morning. The UU Women's Federation affirms the inherent value of every woman, defined inclusively as one who identifies as a woman, trans woman, or genderqueer woman. We affirm the importance of women's voices in our religious movement. We pledge action against the religious roots of sexism. We pledge to support the diversity of religious feminisms. We work to raise consciousness of the linked nature of oppressions, and we seek justice for all women in the struggle to transform institutions of oppression. Thank you. We think it's a great mission. Now more than ever, this mission is imperative. We have not conquered sexism in our society or our denomination. And our work reflects our resistance to injustice, as well as the celebrations that we collectively take, big and small, as we move forward. We resist, we rejoice, we persist. Our board of directors is comprised of passionate volunteers from across the country who are committed to gender justice and intersectionality. At this General Assembly, we are welcoming our newest board member, Marissa Gutierrez-Vicario, currently residing in Brooklyn, and the founder of Art and Resistance Through Education, or ARTE, a nonprofit that engages young people to organize around human rights via art. Marissa has been involved with UU Justice Work since she was 15, and we are very excited to have her joining our team. Absolutely. This is an incredibly big year for women in Unitarian Universalism. 40 years ago today, at General Assembly in Ithaca, New York, the Women and Religion Resolution was passed, which calls on the UUA to examine the religious roots of sexism and to address justice for women. As we mark this historic anniversary, we acknowledge the great progress that has been made, and we commit ourselves to continued work. In honor of this anniversary, I am excited to announce that the UU Women's Federation and UU Women and Religion are exploring uniting in a much more formal partnership to strengthen our mutual quest toward gender equity as we head into the next 40 years serving you and Unitarian Universalism. Also, in honor of this anniversary, we created a new sermon award on justice for women and girls, which we awarded to the incredible Erin J. Walter for her sermon From Eve to Hillary. Yesterday, we sponsored the program in which Ms. Walter shared her sermon, exploring the silencing of women's voices, from Eve to Hillary to all of us. She was joined by two incredibly brilliant respondents, the Reverend Teresa Inés Soto and Chris Crass, who engaged the audience in a lively discussion about actions we can all take to heal from sexism and misogyny and create justice for women and girls. We also are proud to have recently awarded a Marjorie Bowens Wheatley Scholarship designed to provide direct financial support to aspirants or candidates to the UU ministry or candidates in the UUA's religious education or music leadership programs who identify as women of color, Latina, or Hispanic. Our most recent awardee, Aisha Ansano, shared how her multiracial, multinational, and multi-ethnic identity has helped her to see herself as both a bridge builder and leader within Unitarian Universalism. We are so pleased to support Aisha on her path to ministry. In response to concerns raised about exclusion in the hiring of the UUA, the UU Women's Federation issued a statement that articulates our commitment to being an active part of the work to address racism and white supremacy within UUism. In it, we state, all white Unitarian Universalists must know that we have benefited from first the outright subjugation of people of color, and now the less obvious but no less painful pushing away, passing over because you don't fit with the team. Therefore, as the UU Women's Federation is committed to justice for women and girls and is an organization that recognizes that white supremacy and patriarchy are deeply intertwined, we support the call to deepen our understanding and hold up a mirror to ourselves and our institutions. We further commit to being an active part of the solution as Unitarian Universalism continues the journey of becoming a fully inclusive and equitable faith community. This is a moral imperative. An additional advocacy, specifically in response to a call for faith organizations to respond to the GOP healthcare bill that would repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, we crafted a response statement. This legislation, which would harm millions of Americans, would be especially disastrous for women, endangering not only basic healthcare services, but especially access to reproductive health care. Our statement read, as Unitarian Universalists committed to gender equity, we believe in justice, dignity, and compassion for all, and that universal access to affordable and comprehensive health care is also a moral imperative. This is an historic General Assembly, as was the one 40 years ago, as we have had the opportunity to welcome the first woman serving as a president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, and the brilliant and talented Reverend Sophia Bentoncourt. In addition, at this very gathering, we will be selecting the first elected female president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. We are very pleased to have 3 incredibly talented, dedicated women running to serve. To that end, another way we sought to support our mission was to ensure that gender justice was part of the presidential campaign. As in past elections, the UU Women's Federation interviewed the candidates for UUA president. To read the individual responses to our questions about gender equity and justice, both within the UUA and society at large, please visit our website. After ensuring that concerns about diversity and intersectionality were addressed, we were very proud to be an early partner organization for the Women's March in Washington, D.C. On January 21st, UUs all over the country and world marched for women. Please give a shout out if you were among those who marched that day. Gave me chills. We pledged support and financial resources to this march because we believe in their mission that women's rights are human rights are women's rights. We have intersecting identities that are impacted by a multitude of social justice issues. Therefore, no woman is free until all people are free. We also have signed the Women's March Pledge for Liberation, calling for the end to sexual violence, state violence, and police violence, securing reproductive rights, the LGBTQIA rights, workers' rights, disability rights, and immigrant rights, and working for environmental and economic justice and the end to war. In addition to the march, we have continued our commitment to active partnerships with groups working on the full range of gender justice issues. Partner organizations include Sister Song, the National Employment Law Project, Families USA, Planned Parenthood, the ACLU, and many others. We have co-signed numerous petitions and letters and been part of advocacy ads. We post regularly these actions and report to our members through our social media, including a blog authored by our affiliated minister, the talented Reverend Marty Keller, who brings more than 30 years' experience in public witness and advocacy to gender and justice work. Another partnership of which we have been proud is between Standing on the Side of Love and the UUWF, when we partnered to provide support for Black Lives Matter leaders who are also identified as women caregivers. Standing on the Side of Love staff were part of strategy conversations with leaders of Black Lives Matter who raised how family costs are creating a burden for women to stay in the movement. The UU Women's Federation provided $10,000 to fund 10 women with $1,000 each to help offset dependent care and seek to allow them to remain doing the critical work they do. These are just a few of the numerous recent highlights of our work. The UU Women's Federation seeks to amplify the voices in the Unitarian Universalist movement and the voices of UU women throughout our country. We also seek to honor the men and those of all genders committed to gender equity as well. We are committed to engaging all UUs in this work for gender justice. For more information, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and see our website. In closing, we invite you to join us on the quest for gender justice. And as the General Assembly did 40 years ago today with the unanimous passage of the Women and Religion Resolution, we are excited to be part of history as it is made tomorrow when we choose the first elected woman UUA president. Please know how much we appreciate with you on joining us in this journey. Onward, friends. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are running just a little behind, but here is my promise to you. You will be home in time for breakfast tomorrow. Don't worry, it's all under control and we've still got some great things, but we are just slightly behind, so hang tight. It's my pleasure now to welcome Jessica York, Faith Development Director and Interim Director of Ministries and Faith Development, a member of our Leadership Council, for the presentation of the Angus H. McLean Award for Excellence in Religious Education.
Good morning. Wise ones, you may be surprised to hear that there are those who think that religious education is only for children and youth, as if they do not realize that we are on a lifelong journey full of joys and sorrows, moments of clarity, times of doubt, in the midst of friendships, and at times alone and afraid. We need our faith to see us through those times. We need to keep learning and relearning how to hold ourselves up to our highest values and how to hold our fellow companions in forgiveness and love. The Reverend Pat Hortdorfer, a wise one herself, understands this. She witnessed the religious and spiritual unfolding of her own life, and she made a commitment to companion us on ours, wherever she found us, in congregations, districts, at the Unitarian Universalist Association, at camps and conference centers, and in academic institutions. Her religious education career started with 10 years of service as the Director of Religious Education at May Memorial Unitarian Society in Syracuse, New York. It includes serving as the National Director of Ethical Education at the American Ethical Union in New York City, before coming back to a congregation as the Minister of Religious Education at River Road Unitarian Church in Bethesda, Maryland. Pat's talents were recognized, and for 16 years, she served on the national level, first as the Children, Family, and Intergenerational Programs Director in the Curriculum Office at the Unitarian Universalist Association, and then on district staff for New Hampshire, Vermont, and Northern New England. Her interfaith experience was invaluable in creating Neighboring Faiths with Christine F. Reed, one of the most used and memorable programs of religious education for decades. Her interfaith work towards a more peaceful world resulted in the 5-volume curriculum series In Our Hands. Her recognition of our need to address the safety of youth and adults in our congregations resulted in her editing, along with Frederick Muir, Safe Congregations Handbook, Nurturing Healthy Boundaries in Our Faith Communities. I know many of you are familiar with that resource. A copy of it quite possibly resides in every congregation's library, every religious educator's office. We think that comprehensive sexuality education keeps people safer, too. And Pat helped develop the K-1 and grades 4-6 of Our Whole Lives and wrote the parent guide to Our Whole Lives. The parent guide is a companion for families that helps them be prepared to take advantage of teachable moments in their child's sexual health development and supports parents and caregivers as the primary sexuality educators that they are. Pat believes that a basic principle of religion is that religion is relationship. She authored a chapter on this topic in Essex Conversations, Visions for Lifespan Religious Education. Her passion for the ethical aspect of religion came to a deeper learning and fuller personal faith development as Pat participated in the UUA's process to develop a Unitarian Universalist ethic of right relations and our understanding of the Unitarian Universalist principles of restorative justice. Pat also has a passion for multi-generational learning and ministry. She created a series of CDs for families to use at home. Let's talk about it, and it includes guiding questions to hold family discussions on topics such as money, marriage, divorce, and interfaith families. And her understanding that we are not only lifelong learners, but that we need a ministry that addresses the specific needs of our elders has ultimately led her to where the journey takes her today, from aging to saging ministry. This ministry is not just needed by elders. It is an important ministry to change our society's culture towards aging and to embrace elder activism toward a just and thriving world for all. Pat's current ministry as a certified saging leader incorporates many of the passions she has embraced her entire ministry, learning from many spiritual wisdom traditions, multi-generational learning, and the importance of ethical relations. Because Pat journeyed with us, beside us, youth programming was strengthened, congregations became safer, and multi-generational ministries extended to include a focus on ministry with and to elders. Her reach goes far beyond the Unitarian Universalist world. The Angus McLean Award was established in 1972 by the St. Lawrence University Theological School Alumni Association and the Religious Education Department at the UUA. It is awarded to someone who has contributed to the quality of religious education at the local level, raised the quality of religious education at the associate level, been innovative in the use of religious education resources, brought dignity to the profession of religious education, and influenced religious education beyond our association. Wise ones, I think you would agree that Pat's life journey exemplifies all of these qualities. The Angus McLean Award for Excellence in Religious Education 2017 is awarded to the Reverend Pat Hortdorfer.
Only I stand before you today, but truly I am a unique mixture of my lifelong relationships, and all my work reflects collaboration of my many relationships. With gratitude to my family, Grandma Sophie, my parents, my 50-year marriage to Manfred, our 4 children, to my mentors, Samuel Joseph May, Sophia Faz and Angus McLean, Kodea, Muriel Davies, Oren Lyons. And to my colleagues, the awesome foursome of the UUA Curriculum Office for many years, and the Family Matters Task Force. I am, because of all these relations and so much more, the person practicing integrity, compassion, and courage. My life's work of 40 years broke me open to the moral issues of our time, the many faces of injustice and oppression, violence in human relations, and the abuse of planet Earth. In the struggle and the power of love, we have addressed these critical issues and made a difference, I believe. With my congregation's councils, my district's committees, and my UUA partners, we have lived briefly into the presence of love, the practice of restorative justice, and the deepening of our faith. Honoring all these relationships, I humbly accept this Angus McLean Award. With abiding love and deep gratitude, I say to you, my sisters and brothers in faith, I love you. Auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you so much, Pat, for all of your contributions. The UUA bylaws, don't go away. The UUA bylaws, I said it again, state that a congregation becomes a member upon acceptance by the Board of Trustees of the association of its written application for membership in which it subscribes to the principles and pledges to support the association. Our principles and purposes close with this promise. As free congregations, we enter into covenant promising to support one another with our mutual trust and support. The annual program fund, or GIFT, as it's known in the southern region, is the vehicle for the support we provide one another. It is the expression of covenant among us. I'd like to welcome my dear colleagues to the stage, Vale Weller and Elizabeth Terry, and Mary Catherine Moore.
Good morning. As free congregations, we enter into covenant, promising to one another our mutual trust and support. We stand here at this General Assembly keenly aware that we are all asking difficult questions, publicly and privately, about whether we can truly take on the centering of white culture in our faith. And we know that these questions raise other questions about mutual trust and support. The mutual trust and support that is required for us to live our principles, to respond to this crisis and opportunity faithfully and effectively. So many have been frustrated or seen and experienced trust broken. At this General Assembly, we strive to begin again in love. With new voices and new leadership at every level of our association, this time of transitions calls each of us, invites each of us to stay engaged through the brokenness and the pain. The work of cultural transformation is hard in different ways for different people, and yet it is the most vital work we have to do. Our association, our faith, depends on us facing these questions as fearlessly as possible, with honesty, authenticity, and a willingness to risk. And it will take all of us to address the questions being asked, and to make the fundamental changes that will make it possible for us to be the beloved community that truly honors and serves all souls. We are here this morning to thank you for the trust and support you have offered each other and all of us through your participation in the annual program fund and gift in the Southern region. We want to share just a little about what you have made possible through your gifts. I'm very happy to introduce my colleagues, two of the members of our APF team, the Reverend Vale Weller, Director of Congregational Giving, and Elizabeth Terry, Congregational Giving Specialist.
I am Elizabeth Ann Terry.
And I am Reverend Vale Weller, and I'm the Congregational Giving Director for our Unitarian Universalist Association. As has been mentioned, APF contributions are the tangible expression of our covenant with one another, congregation to association. We want you to know the difference that you make through your regular and sustained support of the annual program fund and your regional district giving. Here are a few highlights.
Maybe a few of you attended the National Women's March.
Anyone?
Yeah? All right. In Durango, Colorado, they named their local version Standing on the Side of Love March. How many of you have worn a Standing on the Side of Love shirt or pin or stole when you showed up for justice? The UUA is standing on the side of love. Your giving makes it possible. Let's hear you. We make it possible. You can do better, I know that. We make it possible. All right.
Who here believes that lifespan religious education is important for your congregation? Tapestry of Faith is an online resource curated for congregations of all sizes and shapes. The UUA is Tapestry of Faith. Your giving makes it possible. Let's hear you.
We make it possible. Did you call a new minister this year, or is an interim contract or developmental minister working with you? In Dayton, Ohio, after their minister, Reverend Greg Martin, died suddenly this year, the region set up ministry to serve the congregation, and an interim is set to start soon. The UUA is our regional staff and our transitions office. Your giving makes it possible. We make it possible.
The UUA staff joined 705 congregations and counting in participating in the UU White Supremacy Teach-In, learning together about the institutionalized racism and white supremacy culture that's at play within each of our congregations and the UUA at large. Your giving makes it possible. We make it possible.
Do you have sex? I mean...
Raise your hand.
I mean, do you consider sexuality important enough to be a subject of religious exploration? Woo! The UUA is OWL, with programs for every stage in the lifespan, serving 6-year-olds to 90-year-olds. We make it possible.
Do you know a military chaplain? Have members of your congregation serving in the military felt proud that our own Reverend Sarah Lammert is the chair of the National Conference on Ministry to the Armed Services?
Woo!
The UUA is support for UU military chaplains, reaching all looking for our open-minded faith where they serve.
We make it possible. In January, the UU Fellowship of Northern Nevada and Reno became the first church in the state to provide physical sanctuary to an undocumented immigrant whose name is David Chavez Macias. The UUA is the declaration of conscience, love, resist, in partnership with the UUSC, and is the offering of tools for sanctuary and solidarity. We make it possible. Hey, you're falling down on that "we make it possible" thing. We make it possible. All right.
Your financial support through APF and GIFT and regional and district contributions power the entire UUA. How many of your congregations contributed to the annual program fund and your district or region? Please raise your hands and keep your hands up.
Woo! Look around. These are the people representing the congregations that make all that is the UUA possible. Would you join us in thanking them?
Hands up.
Hands up.
Thank you for your congregation's ongoing support of the annual program fund GIFT in the Southern region. These contributions are our UUA's primary source of funding to support our congregations, amplify our moral voice in the world, and protect our history and our future as a religious movement. APF contributions are the tangible expression of our covenant with one another.
Please see us and our colleagues at the Stewardship and Development booth, which is right outside these doors, while you're here at General Assembly, or reach out to us once you are home. We are here to help your congregation understand the annual program fund and GIFT, and would love to help empower your congregation to fulfill the amount requested. Thank you.
Trust and support. It does not go without saying. We are at a tender and critical time for our faith. Our faith needs you. Your faith needs you. You make it happen. Anything we imagine, any transformation that is possible is only possible because of you. Because you hold your leaders accountable, and because you do the weekly labors of love that make congregational life. Even as you read about the foundation shaking changes happening in UUA leadership, you show up on Sunday morning or any time the work of our faith is needed. Your faith needs you. Thank you for your care, your love for Unitarian Universalism, your hope, and for your support. Thank you. And now is the time to honor some of the very generous Unitarian Universalists who have died this year. Their gifts of time, talent, and treasure have profoundly transformed their congregations and our Unitarian Universalism. Their dedication to love and justice will continue to enrich the lives they touched. As we remember these friends who loved our faith with all their hearts and whose hopes for the future now rest with us, may we renew our commitment to this faith we share that connects us to generations gone and generations to come. And I want to thank UU Musicians Network member Scott DeVoe for providing accompaniment for our memorial. Our moderator, Jim Key, died on June 2nd. Jim has served us since his election at the 2013 General Assembly. Jim told us in his first report to the GA how Unitarian Universalism saved his life. He said, in the middle of my chemotherapy, a person who had been an early organizer of our congregation asked if I would serve as president. I was stunned. I asked her if she thought it could wait a year. She said, of course, but I'll be back. Indeed, he continued, she did come back the following year, held a mirror under my nose, noted that I fogged that mirror, and asked me to serve. So a year and a half after my diagnosis, I became the second president of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Beaufort and served in that role for 5 years. Friends, he told us, hear this clearly. Unitarian Universalism saved my life. I owe this faith something, and so I serve as best as my talents allow. Jim wasn't saying that our faith gave him a reprieve from death. He was saying that Unitarian Universalism saved him for meaning and purpose and love. And he spent all of his days living his meaning and purpose and love. And we are better for his service. You are invited to join in a celebration of the life of Jim Key tomorrow, Saturday, at 12:30 p.m. in room R02 of the Convention Center. This service will also be live streamed. Along with Jim, we celebrate the many lives, friendships, and memories that have been lifted up today, and we honor those who died with our own commitment to nurture and grow Unitarian Universalism and build the beloved community in our faith and in our world. Amen.
The moderator, Denise, has asked for music, and music she shall have. Before we engage in the next discussion, it's probably a good thing to breathe. So would you please rise in body or spirit? And I've asked to lead the meditation on breathing the composer, Sarah Dan Jones, our own. She is a UUA board member, and also joining us is the moderator of the UUMN Board of Directors, Deb Weiner.
Yes, ma'am. Greetings, friends. Meditation on breathing. Right. It's in 3 parts. You may self-select. If you consider yourself grounded, you can sing The Sea with Leon. If you consider yourself kind of in the middle of the road, you can sing The Melody with me. If you consider yourself lofty, you may sing with Deb. We'll start with the drone, we'll add the melody, then we'll add the descant, and then we'll see where it takes us. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When
breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Sing, breathe in. When I breathe in,
I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out,
breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. One more time. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. We'll drone it. Breathe in.
breathe out.
Breathe in. Breathe out. Remember to keep breathing, friends.
Thank you all so much. I apologize, I needed a moment. I'd now like to bring our tri-mods back up. You met them yesterday morning. We have co-presidents, we have tri-mods, and so Alandria Williams, Kathy Burek, and Greg Boyd are going to tell you a little bit about our bylaw amendment.
I'm so grateful for that moment we had together. I needed a moment too, Denise. And you gave us what we all needed together. But that's not actually what I'm going to talk to you at the moment. We have some business to do. This is not the only time we do business this week, but we have specific business to do at the moment. So I want to talk to you about Article 2 of our bylaws, which contains a unique expression of how our Unitarian Universalist congregations wish to be together. Article 2 represents our identity as congregations in association, including the purposes of our Unitarian Universalist Association, our freedom of belief clause, and probably most prominently, the membership covenant of our principles and the sources of our living tradition. The promises and aspirations in Article 2 offer one of our deepest understandings of what connects us and our communities across all space and all time, what grounds our communities in the experience of the holy, whatever that experience is for us, and how we might work with the whole world to wake up to the beloved community of wholeness and justice. Because of the value we place on the identity statements in Article 2, this is who we say we are to one another and to the world. Our spiritual forebears, both our ancestors and our elders, even some of our yelders, our young elders, they urge us to make changes with great dialogue and over at least, at a very minimum, a 2-year period. For identity statements in Article 2 of our bylaws preceded by the letter C, our spiritual forebears urge even more caution and urge us to refer any proposed changes first to a study commission to be appointed by your Board of Trustees. Your Board of Trustees is the General Assembly in between meetings of the General Assembly. We have the full power of all of you, and we listen.
The goal of such a commission is to ensure broad congregational outreach so that there are multiple opportunities for all congregations to participate in any decisions about who we say we are. Not just the congregations that sent delegates to General Assembly, but as many congregations as possible who want to be involved in a dialogue about who we want to be and how we want to be those people. So in a few minutes, we'll begin a discussion of a proposed amendment to our identity, our first principle, which is contained in Article C-2.1. Because it is a C, the C stands for Constitution, which is a standard bit of nonprofit organizational language that was really in vogue in the 60s. We would have made a separate document nowadays, but instead we made a C bylaw. The process that's set forth for us is that we send the proposed language to a study commission that then seeks input from congregations beyond those who are present today. That study commission has a year or 2 years to seek as much input on all of Article 2 as possible, and then send it back to your Board of Trustees, who will then put it on the agenda of the next General Assembly after they receive input from the study commission. Are you all with me? Awesome. All right, so we're going to begin that process, and I want to highlight once again what we have agreed to as congregations in association is that we want to take some time with our identity. We said we want identity statements to go through an additional review process to make sure we've heard as many voices as we possibly can, as many voices of our communities as we possibly can. Alandria?
Good morning, everybody. Can we get a little louder? Good morning, everybody. Oh, yeah, thank you. Laura Kim, can I see you? Amen. So, does everyone have your blue sheets of paper? If not, this would be a good time to get it out. All right. So, we're on the proposed change to the Article 2 principles and purposes. This one is around changing every person to every being. There has been a request to table this conversation until tomorrow, after we do the other amendment. So, I recognize Laura Kim Joyner with the First Principle Project to please explain.
Thank you, tri-moderators.
The mic is not on. Try it again, Laura. Yeah.
Thank you, tri-moderators. I am Laura Kim Joyner, Community Multi-Species Minister at the Community UU Congregation in White Plains, New York. I serve as wildlife veterinarian throughout Latin America and as the First Principle Project facilitator. As the facilitator for this First Principle Project for the last 4 years, I have witnessed and experienced a multitude of transformational conversations that have healed and inspired people as they consider the inherent worth and dignity of every being. This is an important conversation, and I thank the 25 sponsoring congregations that have done deep and committed work to bring that to us today. I have also witnessed and experienced painful conversations that require care and time, especially in this era of our nation and the UU Association. I truly believe that this voting process today is not the best method for this work, but a study commission that engages us with compassion and ease. We, especially after the multi-mini assembly yesterday, we're not ready for this conversation today. Knowing this, the First Principle Project a year ago started to try to find a way to get it off the agenda, but there was no legal, procedural way to do that at the time. But it became clear that we must find a way, and we found one. Let me try to explain this. If we postpone until tomorrow, until right before the vote for the other bylaw amendment change of men and women to people, we can do something called laying it on the table, which means that the next bylaw vote, changing it to people, will trigger a study commission. And that's what the First Principle Project has wanted all along, is a study commission to slow us down. We can do our work and our conversations there. This postponement that we will be asking you to do in a minute is a move towards supporting the 8th principle, which is about dismantling racism and other oppressions. We have work to do here in ourselves and our institutions, and a deeper and more productive conversation about our principles will help us get there. The First Principle Project firmly supports the 8th Principle Initiative. And so now I believe the moderators would now like to invite you into small group conversations, after which we will then have the motions to change the principle and then to postpone it. Did I get that right?
That was perfect. Thank you. So, we are going to just discuss, one more time, just discuss postponing the debate until tomorrow. All righty? So turn to somebody. We're going to take a couple of minutes so that you can think about it, have a conversation what it means for you to postpone it, and then we'll come back. As the gavel falls to the ground.
Tech needs to know how many minutes.
How do I tell them?
Just go to the mic and say, put 4 minutes on.
Tech Deck, give us 4 minutes, please. And then you're a mess. Yes. I'm done. We're done.
I love this. Okay, I'd like to call you back to order. I'm Kathy Burek. I am also one of the tri-moderators. So, the moderator recognizes the delegate at the procedural mic. Please remember to state your name and your congregation.
Reverend Mary Garman, serving Community Unitarian Universalist in White Plains, New York.
Thank you.
I move the Bylaw Amendment, Article 2, Section C 2.1, Principles, line 12, changing person to being.
Thank you. Is there a second? There is a second. The moderator recognizes the delegate at the procedural microphone.
I am once again Laura Kim Joyner, Community Minister at the Community UU Congregation of White Plains and the First Principle Project Facilitator. I move to postpone this conversation and vote for the Bylaw Amendment, Article 2, Section C21, changing person to being, until tomorrow, immediately before the conversation and vote for the Bylaw Amendment, changing men and women to people. At that time, we plan to lay it on the table, which means we avoid the conversation here that could be divisive and injurious, and we'll just wait for the study commission where we can do the serious work there.
Thank you. Is there a second? There's a second. The moderator recognizes the delegate at the pro microphone.
I still am.
This is all good.
Laura Kim Joyner, Community Multi-Species Minister at the Community UU Congregation at White Plains. You all have heard this before, but let me do my plea again. As the facilitator for the First Principle Project for the last 4 years, I've witnessed and experienced a multitude of transformational conversation. It's an important conversation. Let's not forget it. But I have also witnessed and experienced painful conversations that I don't believe we're ready for now as a nation, or given what's going on in our nation and the UU Association. Therefore, I'm saying let's postpone this until tomorrow, until right before, where we can lay it on the table, which means we'll avoid this confusing, painful, and injurious conversation. We can do our work in conversation in the study commission. Please vote yes and raise your yellow card to postpone this conversation until tomorrow. Thank you.
The moderator recognizes the delegate at the procedural microphone.
Thank you. Sally Gellert, Central Unitarian in Paramus, New Jersey. Asking point of information, was there a study commission on this amendment originally? And if not, does it belong on the agenda now, even as a C section?
Okay. Thank you for your question. There are a number of ways that amendments to the bylaws can get in front of this organization, this General Assembly. One way is through a study commission. There was not one. The other way is through congregations that sign a petition to put it on the agenda, and it was that route that they took.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. The moderator recognizes the delegate at the con microphone.
Good morning. My name is Orlando Montoya from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Savannah. I do not think this should go to a study commission. I think it should be voted down now. I think that our principles should speak to people. And when I hear the inherent worth and dignity of every person, I know that means me, I know that means you, I know that means he, she, they, I know it means us, I know that means we. I don't know what being or living thing means. I think we should vote this down now and stop this effort to dehumanize our principles. Changing it to being or living thing, I think would make our faith even more esoteric, even more philosophical, even more misunderstood, even more academic. So I will urge to vote on this now, today, here, and stop it. So that would be con.
Thank you. I would remind delegates that the motion on the floor is to table, and if you can, try to limit your conversation to the motion to table. The moderator recognizes the delegate at the procedural microphone.
My name is Gene Verinder. I'm with Community UU Church in Plano, Texas. I wish to question a point of order. Do we not currently have two separate motions on the table at the same time?
Okay, there was an original motion to move language to a study commission, and now there is a motion to postpone. I misspoke a moment ago. It's a motion to postpone until tomorrow, and that's what's currently in front of the group.
So we do not consider the first motion at all right now?
Right now, yep.
Thank you.
Motion to postpone. I believe I am at the pro microphone. The moderator recognizes a delegate at the pro mic, whom I really can't see because there's a big camera in the way, but hi.
Hi, I can barely see you too, to look at the screen maybe. I am Christopher D. Sims, representing the UU Church, Rockford, Illinois. We, the First Principle Project, bow to the Eighth Principle Project, headed by Paula Cole Jones, with backing by many, many people of color, including Drum and Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism. It's a focus on people and then animals later. We move postponement until, hold on, let me make sure I got that right, before a vote by the bylaw amendment tomorrow. So, amen, ashe, we bow, we say peace, thank you.
Okay, thank you. The moderator recognizes the delegate at the procedural mic.
I'm Jennifer Stokes, Vice President of the Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church in Jacksonville, Florida. My question is one of clarification on procedure. Should this particular motion be voted up or down when we vote again tomorrow on the second source motion and that one is accepted? Does that not automatically open up all of Article 2 regardless of this vote, whether it happens today or tomorrow?
That's correct. As Greg explained a moment ago, anytime you move language to a study commission, the study commission is free to consider any changes to Article 2. It's a little bit like calling for a constitutional convention. You can't limit what comes up.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, great. The moderator recognizes a delegate at the procedural mic. And by the way, the procedural mic takes precedence, so that's why we keep going back there.
Jeff Stein from First UU Nashville. When I was in the mini yesterday, I understood that the concept of talking about it pro and con here this time was to decide whether it should, if we voted for it, it would go to a study commission. And the question I'm wondering now, with all the good faith of trying to postpone it, I wonder if it's a procedural method to get it to the study commission without having to go through a vote, when it could have been an up and down vote here. So it's a question: is it just a procedural action to effect it to get it to the study commission?
The moderator recognizes the delegate at the procedural microphone.
And still, Laura Kim Joyner. Yes, the intent of postponement was not to avoid a vote. The purpose of the postponement was, after hearing from many people that they weren't ready for this conversation, that we weren't ready to do a binary conversation, pro or con. It's deeper than that, and we don't want to have that conversation here. We want a study commission.
Okay, please just explain the concept rather than advocate.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I explain it then?
I believe so. Thank you. So basically, we're not avoiding it totally. We're going to tomorrow. Okay. The chair recognizes the delegate at the con mic.
Good morning. My name is Roz, and I am board member of the UU congregation in Fullerton, California. I am against postponing this because we are all here, right here and now, ready to vote on this. Second of all, I believe there's too many things going on tomorrow in order for us to vote on this subject effectively. My concern is that the change will allow our first principle to be used as a vehicle for groups such as animal rights activists and anti-choice groups to promote their own agendas. So therefore, I believe that we really should take care of this today and to get it out of the way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I've been advised a bit of a clarification. A vote yes on the main motion would automatically trigger a study commission. A vote no doesn't preclude the study commission from taking this issue up or any other issue. The moderator recognizes the delegate at the procedural microphone.
Bruce Wiggins, First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. I want to call the question, but I was told that we can only do that after 15 minutes, but the amendment clock is not working. So how do I know when 15 minutes is up? Is a motion to call the question in order at this time?
Let me double check if, thank you.
We're helping here to help.
Okay, thank you, yep. Okay, it looks as though the motion clock might not have been working either, and so we were trying to do some quick math. A motion to call the question, as I understand it, is in order.
I call the question.
Okay. There's a second. I believe this is non-debatable? No. Yes, we have no bananas. All those in favor of calling the question, I'm going to ask you to please raise your delegate cards. Thank you. Please put them down. Any opposed? Okay, the question is called, and I believe that means we are on the motion to postpone until tomorrow. All those in favor of postponing until tomorrow, raise your delegate cards. Thank you. Please put them down. Any opposed? The moderator is in doubt. I think we are going to need to have our tellers. Okay, let's try again. Please put your, if you're in favor of postponing until tomorrow, please raise your delegate cards. And I've got some extra eyes here, so keep them up. All right, please put them down. Now let's see those opposed to postponing. We're going to have to count? It's passed. It's passed. Okay. Okay, the...
You need to tell us. You need to tell us. Wait for the offsite.
Oh, we have off-site delegates, 2 in favor of postponement, 1 against. Oh, no, 1. Okay, I think there is a slight preponderance of people in favor of postponing. So we will postpone this further conversation of this amendment until tomorrow, just before the conversation on the other bylaws proposal. Thank you. Okay, a couple of announcements, and one of them might be that if you have a delegate card, and it would be really helpful if you could kind of avoid those far sections, because between the lighting and just the width of this room, it's really hard to see how many of you all are out there. Thank you. Announcements.
How's this conversation going, friends? This is good. We're learning. So first of all, an announcement about greater inclusion, which is that for the first time there is a play area for young children here at the General Assembly in the Great Hall. It's over there. If you have a young child with you, or you just need to go be close to a young child in order to clear your mind, go on over there. You are encouraged, warmly and strongly encouraged, to attend the Candidates Forum this evening, 8 o'clock, here in the Great Hall. Polls will close tomorrow at 5 p.m. The election announcement will be made at the close of the Synergy service, the young adult service, here in this room as well. That service begins at 5 o'clock. We are making this announcement at that service in part to encourage you to attend, to invest in the future of this movement, to connect to our young people, and to learn and grow in response to what they have to say. You also will get to find out who will be elected as the 9th president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Thanks very much. Enjoy your lunch.
Not yet.
Oh, no, don't go yet.
Don't go. You can't
Closing
eat yet. We have just one more announcement. The blue sheets that we were just using, please hold on to those for tomorrow so that we don't have to tear down any more blue trees. Our closing reading, forgive me, before we have our closing reading, I'd like to invite our process observers to give us just a bit of feedback about how we did today.
Thank you again. It is an honor for us to bear witness to this weaving of voices and of stories, and the expression of years of hard work, long haul work, back aching work, homecoming work, and welcoming work. Our jobs are certainly made easier when the day begins with Stephen and Hannah and the Right Relations team holding themselves accountable and reminding us to rejoice in the profound possibility of doing better. You are in the deep practice of both being present and observing your own inner work, being in the moment and being on the balcony. You are doing the hard work of dealing with issues of race, culture, gender, class, but I also want to call out the incredible work you are living out on one of the most difficult divides that I find in my work in dialogue in this country, which is the divide across generations. You are celebrating and honoring each other's wisdom and handing the focus back and forth across the generations. We are reminded by Baba Senika that we are all under construction. And so one of my questions today is, what in you is still under construction? And what questions might you ask? What things might you begin to see that you did not see before? And from whom in this room can you learn those things? We heard from the class, the Commission on Class, that this is being done person by person, pew by pew. We heard from Reverend Bill Sinkford. He reminded us the work that we are doing cannot be enforced, but he urged an urgent invitation to this work. And so I wonder how much more present we can be together. And so the only moment of curiosity I have, recognizing that we have all left behind so much to be here, loved ones and people who are holding down jobs for us and people who need care and emergencies. I also find myself in my own tendency to, when I look at my phone, to see and check what might be happening on CNN or what the president might have tweeted today. And I wonder whether we all might choose to be a little bit more present and to seek out in each other some of the wisdom and the being together and the hard work of working person by person and pew by pew. Thank you.
Peace, family. and good afternoon. It's been a really emotional morning for so many of us, and I just want to give you deep gratitude and appreciation that, again, that we've been invited here into the UUGA with open arms, and the love and the trust that you've been given to us to share in this moment of vulnerability with you, and to observe and to listen and to share our reflections as you dive deeper into who you are and who you want to be and who you should be. This morning, my mind and my heart and soul were set alight with hope, and tears flowed as the truth was delivered in such a loving and honest way through the reflections and recommendations from the interim co-presidents and Baba Sanyika. When we listen to you deeply, we hear that the work of dismantling the Master's house is being done, and the building blocks of transformation of a new home that can house all UUs have been delivered and are there waiting at the door. But the new structure, one that is truly inclusive, anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and a healing space where people of colour and Indigenous leadership can thrive within, still needs to be built. This building requires the many hands here in this room and the hands within each of your congregations. This work cannot and must not be left to UU staff and the people of colour within. Every single member is needed to pick up a brick, and then another brick, and then another, until your new home is in order. This work, the work of changing culture, dismantling oppressive systems and structures, unweaving white supremacy from within ourselves and within UU, is high-impact work, but only when done with low ego. We are co-creating, I want to remind you that we're co-creating a mural with you, an art activist and art healing space, a space where you can come and have your voice and share and tell the story and also look towards the future. It was inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King's, his Where lecture that he gave, "Don't sleep through the revolution." I see eyes here snapped wide open by truth. UU is woke once more, but staying woke is hard. You will at times want to close your eyes again and sleep. This work is so tiring, believe me, I know. But you must bring yourself into this beautiful struggle. Do not resist change, rejoice in the challenges. There will be sacrifice, but with faith, with resources, hope, trust, and that you love that I feel so strongly, you will become a radical and revolutionary leader, and one that those watching in trepidation and cynicism will follow the path that you begin to lay down and that you began to lay down 11 weeks ago, and yesterday, and today, and tomorrow, and onwards. I want you and we want you to know that your work, this work, goes beyond the UU world. We leave our reflections with some words that were delivered by Martin Luther King Jr. at that lecture. And he said so eloquently and powerfully, "To remain awake through this revolution is to move out into the arena of social action. It is not enough to work in the ideological realm and to clear up misguided ideas. To remain awake through this social revolution, the church must engage in strong action programs to get rid of the last vestiges of segregation and discrimination." I thank you all so, so much from the bottom of my heart, from the depths of my soul, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you. Ashe. Amen. Thank you.
So it's a little sad to me, before we have our closing words, that a number of people left before the process observation. So if you have friends that left, this is how the world is seeing us. This is not just about us, the UUA, but what the rest of the world is seeing. And Natalie and John represent that outside view. So encourage people, I know we ran late, but encourage people to stay if they can wait just a few more moments, because it's very important to hear what they have to say. I ask that Margie Manning, I will give Margie Manning a personal point of privilege at the procedural mic.
Moderator Rhymes, this is a statement of point of personal privilege from an off-site delegate, Scott Yeomans of the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Lafayette, Colorado. He speaks for, I believe, a couple other off-site delegates. Please allow time for off-site voters. Some are online, some are on the telephone, and we hear what's happening with various delays. My request is that a period of time, perhaps a full minute, be given for all votes so that off-site folks can contribute.
Thank you. Thank you for that reminder. Thank you, Scott. And now, before I call us into recess, our closing reading from Christina Yavata, our financial secretary.
I had a reading for y'all. It was really long. I know we want to eat, right? Yeah? Okay. So when we're done here, just a reminder, please let folks with mobility issues exit first, and then we will go ahead and all of us, the rest of us, exit as needed. So we have had church today, like you said, Denise. Wow. And in my family, every day when we have leave taking of each other, we have a blessing. We give each other love, affection, care. So as we leave take today, I just want you to turn to some, don't do it yet. Just want you to turn to somebody that you don't know and give them your blessing. You can use the words peace be upon you or whatever words work for you. But I just want you to turn to somebody right now that you don't know and give them your blessing as we go out and into the world. I turn you back over to Moderator Rhymes, and again, just remember about the leave taking.
There being no further business to come before us, in accordance with the schedule set forth in your program book, I declare that this general session of the General Assembly shall stand in recess until 8:45 a.m. on Saturday, June 24th.